Dun, 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 dun. All right, no music. I made y'all wait. If you're watching on the rewatch, we started the stream 15 minutes late. I spilled lamp oil all over my desk. And yes, it was lamp oil, not dirty water from a. I know what you're thinking. It wasn't that. It was lamp oil. I have one of those old school thermometer things. It's oil in a glass cylinder, and it's got little balls of different liquids that rise at different temperatures, and they've got little readings on the balls, and so the balls are floating and rising and telling you what temperature it is. It's kind of steampunk looking, and bottom line is I was moving stuff around on my desk, tipped it over, broke it, and its contents gushed effusively all over my desk. So it is nice and shiny and oiled up. But I had a little panic meltdown. Hey, Eldric Stoneskin, thanks for coming on the stream with me, buddy. Just pulling it together here, but we are recovered. We've got some incense burning, and we're here to talk about the Stoned Kings of Winter. Stone Kings of Winter. I think it was self-referential there. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being on. You have a YouTube channel. It's called Eldric Stoneskin, and why don't you say hello to everyone and surprise everybody with what part of the world you're from.
Hey everybody, I'm Eldric Stoneskin. I'm from Australia. Started my YouTube channel about a year and a half ago. Been in the fandom for quite some time. And yeah, really took an interest in the Stone Kings of Winter. And, they seem very much to be alive down there, or something's going on. It's very heavily foreshadowed, and started looking into that, and here I am talking to David Lightbringer, the lamp spiller.
The lamp spiller. What kind of Lightbringer am I? Spilling the lamp oil. There's symbolism or irony in there somewhere. But yes, thank you for getting up early. And of course, welcome to our international community who's always with us from all over the world. We love that. Eldric Stoneskin has been in the chat for a long time, so many of y'all in the chat will be familiar. He's in our Discord, which, by the way, if you want to get an invite to our semi-private Discord, all you have to do is join either the YouTube squisher with the join button. It's called memberships, or join Patreon, which getting ready to do some new stuff on Patreon. Not going to do the whole announcement yet, but basically we've only been using Patreon as a way to take your support and in an organized, secure fashion. But we will soon be offering extra content because I've got ideas for stuff, and it's going to be on Patreon. So stay tuned for that. But for now, and hey, Mickey, good to see all my mods in the chat. Appreciate y'all mods. This is going to be a heavyweight stream, so we want to get right into it here. And basically, yes, many streams have been done about the crypts of Winterfell. I've done at least 2 or 3 Halloween Winterfell crypt streams, where we go through all the different theories of what might be down there. And one of the main things we always run into is this Men of Dun Harrow parallel to Lord of the Rings. And that's where Aragorn goes in and he gets the ghostly army because they didn't live up to their word sometime in the past to Aragorn's ancestors. And so their ghosts are trapped and they're paying off this debt by serving Aragorn, in this battle or whatever. You guys know the story. So everybody's picked up that there are these implications that the Stone Kings of Winter are kind of like the Men of Dun Harrow in that they seem like they really want to get up and fight or something. And so there has been many attempts to explain what Martin might be talking about with that, but nothing that's really become universally accepted. We're all just kind of waiting to see what version of this parallel that he might do. Well, Eldric Stoneskin has gone further with his channel. If you've watched his videos, you'll know that. And so we've got some detailed theories about these Kings of Winter and also the original purpose of Winterfell and the Night's Watch, the Children of the Forest and the First Men working together, what was going on, the first Green Seers, that kind of stuff. And to really go deep in the way that Eldric has gone and the way that I used to go in my super old podcasts, what we have today is, let me just see if I could show the page count here, 33 pages. 33 pages of mostly quotes. These are pretty much all text quotes. There's Ogier the Dane. We'll talk about him in a minute. So we are going to go, this is going to be a symbolism-heavy stream. We're going to start with the basic outline of some of the ideas and parallels that we're going to go into, and then we are going to read the text today. We're going to go into these quotes. We're not going to read every quote word for word. We've got the underlined, the main parts, but basically the only way to really get more specific with this stuff, Eldric, is to look at the words. Because what Martin is doing, as many of you guys in the audience will be familiar with, is he creates these parallels all throughout the story. There's parallel locations, parallel characters, and so we are going to look at Winterfell and the crypts in detail, the way it's described. And we're going to look at all these other parallel locations, which you can see on the screen here. Nightfort, House of Black and White, Braavos, the Titan, the Temple of the Moonsingers, Grey King's Hall, Bridge of Dreams, Shrouded Lord. There's all these places that are echoes. And as we go through the text, you will see the same 5, 6, 7, 8 ideas and symbols that keep reappearing. A black and white, a door, death masks, statues.
Yeah.
Right. So
crying
let
woman statues.
Let me turn you loose to give a basic overview of this Stone Kings of Winter theory here, and then I'll start cutting in as needed. But yeah, let's familiarize ourselves with the parallels that we will be talking about today.
Absolutely, yeah. So I started looking into the Stone Kings of Winter. They seem very animated down there, anthropomorphic statues. And which is strange. And we've had a lot of ideas in the fandom about them, the statues coming to life, but that seems pretty high fantasy for George. I don't think a literal statue rising up again is probably not what we're looking at. And what George likes to do sometimes is take these old motifs and ideas and make them realistic within his world. And the fact that we have Chekhov's statues, and then we have this Chekhov's disease, which can turn people into statues, I sort of joined those two ideas together and went from there. And I'm not saying it is actually could be Greyscale. I think it is, but there's also potential that the roots could be turning people to stone. But I think as we go through this, you'll see there's all these reoccurring ideas of green seers becoming statues being alive and returning to life. It's some really interesting stuff.
Greyscale is a disease that turns people into living statues. And so, right, that's the other part of this, is that the main parallel that we're going to be working with is Greyscale, and some other stuff linked to Braavos and the Valerians, who were first turned into the first Greyscale victims and all that. So basically, what we're saying, what Eldric is saying, is like Greyscale could be a detailed parallel, which tells us all about what the weirwood petrification process is doing. But it might also be actually part of the process. Like Greyscale, the disease, might be some weird leftover of this old magic, in the same way that the House of Black and White skin grafting stuff might be like a weird version of whatever the Boltons used to do that goes back to skin changing. And so that's the other major parallel we're going to talk about, is the House of Black and White. So as we go through this entire stream, keep an open mind that we're simultaneously going to be saying maybe the House of Black and White, the root of the magic, is actual green seers and skin changers, or maybe it's a detailed parallel. We're going to entertain both ideas because it's hard to know which it is, and we want to sort of provide the most educational and entertaining analysis, which means entertaining both possibilities. So
that's it, exactly.
So the two just to set you going here, there's two categories of parallels. There's places, and then there are these statues and armies of statues, statuesque armies, suits of armor that are like statues, the Stone Kings of Winter. There's all these anthropomorphized things. Again, like suits of armor, the dragon skulls. Oh, I forgot to get the dragon skulls quote. That's what I forgot to dig up. I'll have to dig that up off us. That's okay. We'll get to it. And then there's also the locations. And then so talk about stone starks. I think that's probably a good place to talk about.
Absolutely.
They are awfully stony, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And the fact that we have these stone starks beneath the earth, and the starks are green seers, and we see green seers that potentially live beneath the earth. When we look to the starks, they seem very stone-like as well. They're renowned for having grey eyes and for having grey skin. Theon, when he starts to undergo a grey transformation at Winterfell, he looks at his skin, sees it has a greyish undertone, and thinks that he's a Stark at last. So he's turning grey. We go right through Ned's mother's mother was a flint, so they've got that flint stone in their blood. Even Bale the Bard, when he slipped his blood into House Stark, he was known as Sigaric of Skagos. So there's almost that stone-born symbolic stone.
Well, there's
being
actually
in the
Ned's
bloodline.
Ned's. I think if you go back one more generation before the Flints, there are Skagosi that marry into Stark as well.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Even
and that
stonier.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you can go through each character. Elaine Stone, Sansa becoming Elaine Stone, so turning into a stone woman. There's actually a lot of quotes about her. There's two in Game of Thrones suggesting her as having the Grey Plague. People were avoiding her after Ned's treason, as if she had the Grey Plague. We hear
Oh,
that twice.
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
She imagines herself turning to ivory, to steel, to porcelain, as if her skin's getting hard. And then, she becomes Elaine Stone. And she tells herself she must become Elaine Stone inside and out as well. She's always inside and out. I need to become Elaine Stone. We have Catelyn Stark becoming Lady Stoneheart.
Yeah.
Arya's always telling herself she needs to be still as stone, and we'll see a lot more of that in the House of Black and White when we go through that.
Oh, Sam wonders if Jon's heart has turned to stone.
That's another good one.
I just remembered that.
And when did that happen? When he was raised up to be Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. That's when it turned to stone. So
when you get the promotion, right?
Yeah, that's right. Lewin
that's
makes
what I
a
do when I get
statue.
promoted. I get okay. Sorry, I'm making a lot of bad jokes today. You just have to deal with that. Real quick, Yakimo with the super chat. Hello, David and Elric. Love the collab. Thanks for the work y'all do. The way you guys analyze symbolism has influenced the way I teach creative writing and literature to my students. Good stuff.
Man.
Good stuff. I mean, that's kind of, we're trying to get a little lit nerd vibe going here. Clearly, that's our vibe. So appreciate you. And shout out to Farah Giovanna, who does the same. Also a teacher. All the teachers. Shout out to the teachers. So Jon, what are you saying? Jon returning around?
There's
coming back
a
to
potential
life, right?
for Greyscale. Yeah, I mean, we don't know if that's going to happen, but we hear Val saying, Greyscale sleeps until it wakes again, and there's all this foreshadowing of it possibly returning to the wall. Not sure if Jon could contract that at some stage or not, but
this is a good place to insert two ideas. One is that Greyscale is clearly going to be a thing in the next two books. Jon Con has it; he's bringing it to Westeros. George has even said, it's running around Yee, and then there's Shireen. So we're going to find out. I mean, there's a lot of foreshadowing that Jon Con's going to get pushed down a well, like Alan Cockshaw, and it'll probably get into the water supply of King's Landing. That's probably what's going to happen, which is more symbolism now that I think about it. The disease being in the water, in the Green Sea. But we'll get there. And
even
go ahead.
Sorry, Jon Con being a good parallel for Jon himself, Jon Snow.
Yes.
And what is Jon Con? He's turning to stone,
Right, and then Jon is a wight, and that's the other major parallel to stone men and statues are the wights. The wights have their hands are hard as stone. They are like statues, and as we're going to see, a big part of this parallelism is losing of identity, some sort of hive mind, joining where you lose yourself, become no one, etc., etc. That's a big theme that we're going to harp on today. So
yes, yeah.
So Stony Starks, they are all stony.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Rickon going with the Stoneborn. He's off in Skagos now. Lewin makes a statue of Bran in the beginning and throws him from the top of the tower.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Clay statue. Yeah.
And that's that struck by lightning. Anyway, I don't want to derail the conversation yet. But yeah, there's, as you can see, plenty of stone suggestions. Catelyn describes Ned's grey eyes as soft as fog and as hard as stone.
April's piping.
Everywhere.
There are some stony gazes and stares from Ned Stark for sure. And he's also carved of ice and frozen face. And all that freezing works too, because a statue is a person that's frozen in stone. And of course, going back to like Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's a classic fantasy trope, turning people to stone. It's in the Bible, Lot, and his they turned to pillars of salt. So there's Medusa turning people to stone.
I think that's a big one. Sansa having the venom in her hair as well. The becoming lanes. Yeah, it's everywhere. Yeah.
So you were right at the beginning of the stream. You pointed out George looks for ways to do like his version of this stuff. So we shouldn't expect probably the statues to just start moving or whatever, but he's going to find a way to capture that vibe somehow. And that's what we're trying to get after. So these Starks, they're all stony. And of course, we know that the lords get turned into statues down in the crypts. And that's kind of the mystery that we're trying to apprehend. Winterfell as the stone tree is kind of the root of all this, which we'll get to. But let's run through, before we get into all the Winterfell quotes, let's quickly outline these different locations. Because as we start reading the quotes about Winterfell, we're going to want to say, oh, and that's like the Eyrie. Oh, and that's like the House of Black and White. So real quick, we're going to run through these bullet points of what we see as the major hallmarks of symbolism at these different locations. So go ahead with Bloodraven's Cave.
So Bloodraven's Cave seems like a very strong parallel to the Winterfell crypts. Obviously, the Winterfell crypts being beneath the Winterfell weirwood. It seems like it was potentially once upon a time a Children of the Forest cave. It might have been converted by Bran the Builder or something like that. But it's definite Children of the Forest cave vibes down there. And then when we look to Bloodraven's Cave, we see enthroned singers of the children sort of enthroned in roots, and their bodies are being preserved, and their eyes sort of seem to follow people as they pass, and their lips start to move so they're still alive but strapped to the throne of weirwood. And we find Bloodraven described as a statue. And we see a lot of repeating symbols of like the black pools of water. They seem to be all called houses of black and white. We see crying women in all these places. I was looking in Bloodraven's Cave, and we find Mira. She's crying because of the death of her family as well.
Okay.
That seems to be a repeating
it's always
theme.
There. You think that like, oh, this location doesn't have this one, and it's like George will slip it in. You just have to read the whole chapter. Yeah.
That's what I did last night. I thought, every single one of these has like a crying woman who's lost their family. Wonder if it's in Bloodraven's Cave. And I was like, well, yeah, it's Mira, very clear at the end there that she's, lost her brother. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of call outs to Bloodraven's Caves, even being as large as Winterfell's Great Hall. There's all these connections back to Winterfell. We always, actually, in a lot of these, we'll find references. Arya or Bran or whoever's there will be referring to these places as like Winterfell.
The Child of the Forest looks like Arya. And Arya is a character who's down in those crypt areas and parallel places like under King's Landing a lot.
Yep.
So just to actually to pause right here, we should say a couple things about Winterfell that we both kind of believe as canon. So
yes.
Wiz the Smith, I talk about his essay a lot, The Hollow Hills. The hills are hollow. The caves are timeless, hollow hills, something like that. It's got a subtitle. Basically, he's just showing all the weirwood locations. There's always a cave and a hill and a tree. It's just the setup that we get. It's everywhere. And so Winterfell, for example, the word fell can mean hill. And Winterfell is indeed built on hills. The landscape was not leveled, which means that they're working with the natural caves under the hills. And also says that the caverns go all through the caves and the surrounding forest into the Wolfswood. So it's strongly implied that the caverns that the crypts are built into, hey girl nettles, extend out into the forest. There's, Jason Vermax. Vermax may have gotten down into the crypts and laid an egg. Well, he didn't go down the little spiral staircase. The only way he would have gotten in is, it's pretty funny. It's so tight. Is through a cavern out in the woods. Also, if Bael the Bard hid in the crypts for a year, how'd he get food? Well, he was sneaking out of the woods and hunting. He's a wildling, and then sneaking back in. So probably caverns all through there. And in fact, I will give a real quick shout out on Discord. I asked for questions, and there was one about the hills, suggesting that perhaps they could be used as an escape route. They're saying, what role will the crypts play in the long night? And this is Noble 1997. The show gave us an idea where they thought they would be a safe haven and turned into a trap. But he's asking about an escape route, or they're asking about an escape route. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think all of them are probably subterraneanly connected, I would imagine. I can see a whole nother world. the subterranean world beneath the earth that is hidden was a very 70s trope that George, I'm sure, would be well aware of and would be drawing on. And we see all these places, even the Gendel and Gorn story. You can just see perhaps there's just tunnel systems that go all across the world. If anyone's played Elden Ring, it's almost as if there's another underworld, like the map beneath the lands between. We find a whole nother underworld that you can
I remember when I was a
move around
kid,
beneath.
I thought that's what Middle Earth meant. I thought everything was happening in a hollow Earth. It's not. It's not. It's like I was looking up at the sky, like, where's the crust? But yes, and the other part of this comment is like Mira and Bran. I think it was originally Quinn's ideas who proposed that they're going to escape on that river. And of course, Mira knows how to make a boat from basically anything: roots, branches, bark, reeds, things like that. She can make a boat, and they will sail out of the cave. Makes more sense than Mira like sled hauling Bran through the woods because Hodor had to hold the door somewhere. So I love this theory, and I really do think it'll be how they escape Bloodraven's cave. How far that river goes, it could go all the way to Winterfell. It might just need to go under the wall to get them under the wall, but it could go far. Gendel and Gorn, like you said, came out near Long Lake. There could be, underground water system there. So we don't know how much it connects, but it is a trope, and certainly we could see it used in the upcoming Battle of Winterfell with Stannis potentially pulling subterfuge with the Manderleys and, being led into the castle as a pretend captive, and then this army sneaks in somewhere else. Like, there's going to be some tricky stuff going on there. So I think that
If
those caves...
Stannis' army does come through from the crypts, that's an army rising up from the crypts. An Azor ahai figure raising an army up from beneath the earth as well. So,
book it, Dano.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And Greywaste Tim earlier in the chat mentioned, of course, the famous quote that Cersei delivers to Ned, sending him home to the Grey Waste, you Starks call home, or whatever. And then Ned thinks about the frozen hell reserved for Starks. So Grey Waste is nice because that's a little more statue-esque. A waste, like that means where nothing lives. A statue is dead, like...
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
All of a piece. So let's get back to the parallel locations. That's what I was want to say about the Winterfell is... Oh, the other thing is, it is probably, strongly suspect that both of us do, that this is the place where Bran the Builder learned the magic of the Children of the Forest. Would have been in these caverns. Bran the Builder then built Winterfell with the Heart Tree looking on. So he's building, the first keep is built over the crypts, and the crypts seem to be the first thing going on. So the origins of Winterfell no doubt have to do with Bran the Builder, the Children of the Forest, and the Starks becoming green seers and stuff. That is, I guess that's an assumption, but I just wanted to make sure everyone's like, we're on the same page here. So
yeah, and it even makes sense that what we know of Winterfell in its original form, all we know is that we had the crypts and we had the first keep. It doesn't sound like there was anything else. There was no walls, there was no other buildings. And why would Bran the Builder only build these two locations for his ancestral seat? Why didn't he build, like, he's known for building the biggest things in Westeros. So why? Well, them being green seers, Starks being green seers, it makes sense. Potentially they're living beneath the earth like Children of the Forest initially, maybe. Or they're using the roots of the thrones to preserve their life. And yeah, it's just unusual. There was no castle above ground except for one tower. It's very strange.
The crypts are the point, I think, is the safe conclusion. So we talked about Bloodraven's cave, and then the last thing is that it is full of black and white imagery. And that's kind of the thing about the House of Black and White itself. It's a house of the dead, right? Now, when you're underground, that's kind of how it looks. Like the light puts everything in two-tone. It'd actually be like orangish white to black, depending on your torchlight or whatever. But the point is, it saps it of color. Martin always does this, where at nighttime, everything turns black and white. The weirwood leaves, red turns black. Everything turns silver and black and white. So this is just symbolic language that lets you know Martin is talking about some sort of land of the dead, realm of the dead, nighttime. the Deadlands, the Underworld, etc., etc. It's always black and white. So that's why we see that black and white basically played out everywhere. So the next place is the Nightfort. We have a white weirwood door called the Black Gate. So it's black and white too. Of course, they're doing everything there at night, so the color palette is the same. The weirwood is silver, reaching for the moon and stuff. So we see it as far as this idea of like statues or an army of the dead. There's a couple of them. The leaves are rattling around in the courtyard like an army of the dead, and then there's the 79 sentinels, which are just incredible works of symbolism. It's like one paragraph. We could just talk about them for 2 hours. Which, of course, shout out to Michael talks about stuff. And Lore Summit #1, which was on the Weirwood system with Michael, and we got into the 79 Sentinels. But we're going to talk about them again today. Then we've got the Rat Cook story, which I believe is about a weirwood tree. It's a big white rat with red eyes that eats its own young, just like the weirwood absorbs subsequent generations of green seers into it, and the Winterfell stone tree has all the dead Starks that it's collecting.
And in a way, it's consuming the young Bran Stark as well. It's
consuming.
It's using him nearly. Yeah,
it literally swallows him. He walks through. Yeah,
he goes into it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the real Rat Cook. And then the Weir Well. So at the bottom is the water, the bottomless water, just like the Black Pond in Winterfell, and the Black Pool in the House of Black and White, and the Black River in Bloodraven's Cave. It's the same thing. It's the well. There might be something swimming down there. Maybe Hodor woke it up with the stone that he threw. And then, of course, it's magically warded, just like Bloodraven's Cave, and probably just like Winterfell. So then the House of Black and White. You guys are all familiar with it, but go ahead, Elric.
Yep, we got black and white weirwood doors again, another weirwood door of black and white. We have the waif is like presented as a symbolic child of the forest, being older than she appears, having large eyes. A waif is literally a homeless child. That's what that term refers to, and that's what the children are. They're homeless after they were evicted from Westeros.
Love that catch, by the way. That was a nice one.
Oh, cheers, man. The kindly man Bloodraven parallels are very strong. The weirwood root coming through the eye. It's the skull face. They sit on weirwood chairs. They have subterranean levels beneath the House of Black and White, filled with bones and skulls, which is what we see in Bloodraven's Cave and what would be in the Winterfell crypts because it's full of bones. What else? The faces beneath the earth in the sanctum that seem to stare out also parallel the Stone Kings in a way that seem to sit beneath the earth and stare out, and the children of the forest that are strapped to the weirwood roots in Bloodraven's Cave that are staring.
The whole temple is on the Isle of the Gods.
Yeah, and it's an Isle of Faces because it's full of faces. And this is another thing I thought of last night, that the Isle of the Gods is that's the God's Isle as well. It's almost like a God's Eye reference in that it's Isle of the Gods.
It's wordplay that'll make your head spin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me pause right now and just tell everybody to go subscribe to Eldric Stoneskin's YouTube channel, because this guy cooks all day and night, and this is why he's on here. I'm just going to throw it right in the chat. Everybody click on this right now. Go subscribe to his channel. He just put out an awesome video a couple days ago. He's got plenty of this, meticulously researched, all the quotes. If you like my stuff, you'll like his stuff. So,
thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Man.
Thanks.
Well, we've got everyone's attention. I just want to here's what we're doing. Geez. This is the point of the Lore Summit. We're bringing together the different ideas and then exposing you guys to other ideas. I am not trying to be some sort of tyrant of the theories over here. This is the most fun I have is these kinds of collaborations. So
absolutely. And probably the last one in the House of Black and White is it's full of statues. We see statues along the wall and the crying woman statue, just like Lyanna in the Winterfell crypts yet again.
There's a weirwood statue. There's a crying woman statue. Yes, there is. And there's a Lion of Night on the throne. He's on a stone throne.
Yeah. I need to look further down that line. It's a black ebony throne. Yeah.
It's just another version of Azor ahai. It's the Darkened Sun King. So same idea.
Yeah.
Mom, Dad, David Lightbringer is exposing me to new ideas and lamp oil. If you drop by and get some on your hands. No, I think I got it all. Man, that was okay. So, the Dosh Kalin have a bunch of statues. Oh, they sure do.
Oh, I
And
meant
they
to bring
have
that.
and they have a bunch of all their homes are in little holes under the ground. They build little mounds, and then they live underground. There's a bunch of Child of the Forest connections in Vase Dothrak. Somebody else has found those before. So thanks, Kimberly. Nice one.
I actually have that quote, and I'll try and dig it up because it is very interesting. They're stone kings. Yeah, I'll
Right. They're
give
the
me 1 second.
gods and lords and kings from many, many places. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're brandishing a broken thunderbolt in their hand. It's yeah.
Tell
Once
us
again,
your
Grey
night lamp
King.
oil theory. Well, check out my Winds of Winter predictions that I did with Quinn's Ideas like 4 years ago. We went into that in detail. Okay. So the Temple of the Moon Singers, there's more in Braavos than the House of Black and White. Braavos itself is a city of islands in a green network of canals. So it's green water and it's a network. That's obviously a weirwood net symbol, just like the network of canals in the Sworn Sword, where they're fighting over the dam, aka the weir, and they've dammed up the river in order to irrigate the fields with the canals, and the canals are the weirwood net. So same thing in Braavos. And you notice dead people get thrown into the canals, like when Arya has to kill somebody, they go in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Sam goes in and out. So that's like functions as a rebirth scene.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
all stone. These are stone islands. And so, yeah, it's Braavos is an extensive weirwood net parallel. The arsenal where they make all the ships, those are, the whole ship metaphor is from the Grey King, where he has this weirwood boat, and the weirwood trees are like ships and vessels for the Green Seers to navigate the astral realm or the Green Sea. And so they, of course, are making boats aplenty in Braavos. And then we have, well, the Temple of the Moon Singers first, then the Titan. So the Temple of the Moon Singers is basically just an ice temple. And the joke is that moon singers are wolves. Wolves sing to the moon. So this is a icy wolf temple, and there's some moon phases and some snowy stuff. But the Titan is something we have not talked about on this channel nearly enough. And I think maybe we'll do a reread of this chapter soon, when Arya comes to Braavos. Tell us about the Titan, Eldric.
Yeah, the Titan's very interesting. He's, as we all know, he's described by Old Nan as a statue that sort of comes to life and wades into the sea to protect his people, which plays into the King Asleep in the Mountain motif, which we'll talk about later. I think the main thing is he's holding this broken sword, which is like a definite last hero symbol. And when we think to the last hero and his companions and his dog, which is most likely a direwolf, he's probably a Stark. So the fact we're being shown a Stark, an ancient Stark hero as a statue with this broken sword in this green sea who comes to life to protect his people is very interesting. Yeah,
And then they
there's a
even
lot of
talk, we'll
connections.
get into it, but they talk about he's big enough to step over the walls of Winterfell, which
Yeah.
ties into all the stories of giants at Winterfell that Sansa and Peter Baelish are talking about when they're building. Here comes Rob and Aaron with his giant, and
Yep.
Peter's like, "Oh, that's not the first giant they've stuck a head on a spike at Winterfell, if the tales be true." So yeah, there's a lot of Titan
Mm,
stuff. But to go back, the most important thing about the Titan, I think, is this idea of coming out of the sea to defend the city. That's what we're talking about with the men of Dunharrow, with the spirits of the kings of winter, with the undead Night's Watch. Because, guys, obviously all this is complementary to Green Zombie's theory, which is just my
yes.
theory that the original Last Heroes, his first Watchmen, were the same as his 12 dead companions. They got resurrected like Cold Hands and John, and that's the original Watch. All the language of the Watch spells them out as dead green men, essentially. They've got names like John Barleycorn, and a bunch of Garths and all this stuff. But
Yep.
they're wearing funeral black, and they have black blood like wights, and they're just endless death symbolism. So all of this stuff is about defending. Like these weird defenders of the living are somehow these undead men, these people that have made this sacrifice. They've given up their identity. They've become statues or wights or part of the Green Seer godhood or some sort of thing where they've given up themselves in order to be able to serve a purpose of defending the living. And so that is a very important theme. The Titan makes it very clear with his last hero parallels of the broken sword. and stepping out of the Green Sea, meaning reborn from the weirwood net, Green Sea, reborn with the aid of green seers. Jon, no doubt it's not just going to be Melisandre. Bran and Bloodraven are probably going to be involved in Jon's ultimate resurrection too. I really feel that way. You think so too, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
so.
Yep. And even that loss of identity, going back to that, that's exactly what the Night's Watch do as well. They hang their shields up, they forgo their names,
Right.
They become no one in a way as well to protect their,
In fact, I think that's almost the biggest theme that George is talking about with all of this stuff, is this sort of kind of quasi hippie idea of giving up of yourself and becoming part of a collective. I say hippie, but that's only my American sort of lens on it. Obviously, the idea of collective consciousness or just individualism versus collectivism is as old as human society. So George seems to be offering some sort of commentary on the different kinds of collectives that we see. So some of them, people are forced to join, like the Unsullied and like the wights, the ice wights and stuff. So it's a very predatory form of it. But then we see people like Arya and Bran giving up their selves and becoming no one in order to serve. And there's this big thing about service. It's all through Arya's chapters especially. So I'm not sure what exactly George is saying. And even going back to his older works, he's talking about Hive and Song for Lya, joining Hive Mind and stuff. So this is something for you guys to consider as we go through the stream and in the comments. That's an open question, what George is saying about all these hive minds and collective consciousnesses and the balance of individualism versus collectivism. But he's way into it. It's in all these places.
It's everywhere. I didn't even pick up on the Unsullied. You're exactly right. They lose their names. They become another no one. Yeah. Yeah.
It's basically the worst hive mind is the Unsullied.
Yeah. The Titan of Braavos is a lot in the Titan, even down to the Starks as Titan's daughters was something I picked up on as well, with Arya arriving on the ship in Braavos, and the ship's name is the Titan's daughter. And considering the Titan sort of representing the last hero, which is probably her ancestor, this sort of implies her as the Titan's descendant, the Titan's daughter. And then we have Sansa, who becomes Peter Baelish's daughter when she becomes a Lame Stone. And his sigil, his old sigil was the Titan of Braavos. So she becomes a symbolic Titan's daughter as well. So I think it's meant to tell us that the Titan was the last hero, or not him, but this is like a statue built in sort of respect or homage to this hero that carried it out a long time ago, perhaps. And then, I don't think this little statue is coming to life, by the way. It's all symbolic.
Really tighten up. Oh, I'm sorry. Finish. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
No. It was just that I think that the Titan of Braavos is there to tell us what's happening with the original Starks. This statue's not coming to life or anything, but it's just symbolic to suggest what happened to the original Starks and their stone. Yeah.
Well, and so another idea that I'll introduce that we're going to see is that Azor Ahai, the sinner, the bad version, seems, I won't even say that. Azor Ahai and the Starks have a lot of overlap. The Kings of Winter are very Azor Ahai-like with their red swords. And we see that with Ned's Ice, it's a dragon sword that gets turned into this huge Lightbringer symbol. And so we're gonna see that. And there's this original sin idea. Like the Starks have some ancient sin that they're atoning for or trying to, atone for. And then there's the original sin of Azor Ahai killing Nissa and causing the long night. This is all the same sin. It's the defilement of the weirwood net. And so with the Titan, his Azor Ahai parallels are unmistakable. The last hero's broken sword, that's only the beginning. His eyes are like stars. It's one star that turns into two as Arya gets closer. So it's heavy comet language. And then he bellows at daybreak, at sunrise and sunset, meaning he heralds the dawn and heralds the evening, just like the morning star Venus, aka Lightbringer. So he is got a Lightbringer symbol with the broken sword, and he is doing the active Lightbringer of Venus, heralding the sunrise and the sunset. And that, of course, parallels with the Night's Watch, who are the swords that bring the dawn, bring the morning, all that stuff. Turn this get the cycle of the seasons unstuck and turning again. So there's no doubt that this figure, this statue warrior, the Titan or the Stone Kings of Winter, they are last hero Azor Ahai people. They are in that mold. So
absolutely. Yeah. And the fact that he's got those fiery eyes and is presented as a green man with his green hair and green armor, it makes him a burning green man, which you could probably elaborate more on, is a king of winter. You take your green man and then you burn it to bring the spring. It's more of that, bring the changing of the seasons, and the fiery green man is an interesting symbol.
So this gets back to the green zombie theory. We were talking about it yesterday. By the way, me and Eldric have spent at least 4 hours on video calls preparing for this stream. This 33
getting lost down rabbit holes.
Didn't come from nowhere. So the green monster is a recurring character. We see it everywhere. Jon is a green monster. He's a green man zombie. Cold Hands is a green monster. On the Battle of the Blackwater, there's the wildfire monster. He's got a dozen hands, and in each hand a flaming whip. So there's your last hero's dozen fiery weapons, green fire. They talk about there's a power inside living wood as strong as fire. So these are all the same character. The Titan, the green zombies. These are resurrected green men, or people resurrected through green magic, through skin changer magic like Jon. And we will see this character over and over too. So he'll be fiery, be monstrous, and he'll be green in some way. And the Titan is a great version. So well done.
One thing I forgot to mention when we've been chatting is the green man symbol we find a lot as a protector in churches as well. And he's normally carved out of stone in churches as that protector.
You're
as
totally
well.
Right.
Yeah.
And George has carried that out with Garth statues being present even in the chapels of the Faith of the Seven. So it's right there.
Yep.
We're just outlining. This isn't the actual stream.
It's not the in-depth stuff.
We haven't started yet, guys. So the Grey King's Hall.
Whew.
I've only made 9 Ironborn videos about the Grey King. But in case you didn't know, Naga's ribs, they are pale stone. Actually, they are petrified weirwood. And actually what that is it's a boat hull made of weirwood. The major ribs anyway, they got flipped over and turned into a long haul, which is a tradition that the actual Vikings have. And more often, they would simply use the same construction techniques that they used to make a boat to make a long haul. They just flip it over. So if you look at a true Viking long haul, it looks like an upside down boat hull. They use the same technique. So that's what's going on with Naga's ribs. They are petrified weirwood, and so it serves as a weirwood hall. And then that tells us that Grey King, who is said to sit on a throne of Naga's fangs and have a crown of Naga's teeth, well, that's all weirwood too. So now he's on a weirwood throne with a weirwood crown. Bloodraven has weirwood around his head like a crown, the roots. So Grey King seems to be a green seer. And the most important thing is that he turns into a statue for our purposes today. He lives for 1,000 years and 7. He turns gray, everything. Gray, skin, lips, hair, eyes. And he seems to turn into a statue. Well, that's the thing, is that Bloodraven's turning into a statue. And the weirwood face at the Nightfort looks like an old man who's lived for 1,000 years and never died, which is what the Grey King did. So it seems like what Grey King is doing is sitting on a weirwood throne, like Bloodraven, for a long enough to petrify, because we know that weirwood turns to stone. And those weirwood thrones are half made out of dead weirwood branches. And so one of my, at least it was original for me. You may have thought of this too on your own. Some other people may have too. But basically, I think down in the lowest levels of the crypts are petrified green seers, like the Grey King was said to have become. The original Stark kings would be green seers sitting on weirwood thrones that, like Bloodraven, plus 900 years. And they eventually turned all to stone, and this gave rise to the tradition of carving statues out of stone. There may be more to it. There certainly may, but that has been my notion for a long time. And I think you mostly agree with that.
I would agree with that, absolutely. And I'm open to that fact that maybe they go and sit in the thrones, and then the thrones are the thing that petrify them and then turn them to stone. I probably also want to present the idea that maybe they were given Greyscale, went to sit these thrones, and then the Greyscale maybe potentially infected the weirwoods, and that's why weirwoods now turn to stone, because trees don't normally turn to stone. That seems like an
Yes.
unusual abomination in a way. And it comes back to the idea that the Grey King developed some sort of resurrection ritual before he went down into this area where he was blessed with stone and then rose again harder and stronger. There's that almost. I'm wondering if that resurrection ritual involves grayscale somehow. That drowning of a person and then turning them to blessing them with stone. I think even Amanda from Disputed Lands has picked up on a bit of this stuff as well. She's got some really good grayscale stuff in her Ironborn series, which I highly recommend.
Oh yeah, what has she said about the grayscale? I haven't heard that.
So there's a whole nother line of the drowned fool, and the fool wearing motley, the motley looking like that scale, and the wild hunt. It's very detailed. You know what Amanda's like? It's incredible. But the romantic
Amanda's videos,
fool,
if I may interrupt, you'd be like 10 minutes into it, like, this is awesome. Then there'll be some left turn, would be like, oh, I don't know about this. Then 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay, I follow you.
She nailed it, yeah.
Which I bet probably my videos are like that too. So.
So she talked about the fool, and the idea that the fool was based on, there's a thing called harlequin ichthyosis, where it's a real world disease where people sort of become scale-like and turn to stone. And the name, the harlequin, is the name derives from a leader of the Wild Hunt, the French leader of the Wild Hunt, Helican, and they had like the motley, and it's very detailed, very in depth, but it's incredible. It's the idea of the drowned fool, even going back to Patchface and being sort of resurrected, and the stag horns.
And so I did a stream called Aaron Got Patch-Faced, where I speculated that Aaron actually, when he was drowned, was patch-faced, just not as hard. And also Aaron having a cultural context for his mad interpretations of the Deep One's visions makes him seem less crazy than Patchface, who doesn't. There's no Ironborn around to go, yes, you're totally right. March into the sea and back out again. You're right about that. And yes, they wear seashells. Praise the drowned god or whatever. So watch, if you're into this, definitely watch that. But yeah, I see where she's going with that. That makes, because Patchface, he's in motley, and he's marching into the sea and out again, and his best friend has Greyscale, a little statue girl. So yeah. Okay.
So anyway,
shout out to Disputed Lands. That's whose channel
absolutely.
we're talking about. Crowfood's daughter. The channel is the Disputed Lands. I'll have to look up her videos about that. So the Grey King, we've covered a lot of it. It's a lot of weirwood stuff. He has a mermaid wife and ruled the sea. This functions as green seer talk. Nissa Nissa being a child of the forest. She's a mermaid because she's a creature of the green sea. And so we see that theme over and over with mermaid Nissa Nissa characters marrying Azor Ahai or being stolen by Azor Ahai. And so he takes a mermaid wife.
And that's what we see with the Starks, with Ned Stark marrying Catelyn, who's a symbolic mermaid, being a Tully. She's a fish woman, so a mermaid. And they end up having 6 children, which, if you think of the Green Sea, going beneath the sea, Bran is one person who can then go beneath the sea and above it as he chooses. So he can go in and out of the Green Sea, and it seems to be because, it's this Grey King and a mermaid wife, Ned and Catelyn, having a Bran who can go above and below the sea. So there's a lot of parallels between the Grey King and the Starks in general. And I think that's another big, they are Grey Kings, as you said, Dave. Like, they are literally Grey Kings. They're grey people. They're grey-skinned. And even, I picked up on this one. This was pretty interesting, that when Starks die, they go beneath their castle, and their castle has water pumped through its walls. So they literally go beneath the watery halls when they die. Oh, that's what you meant
by that.
Yeah.
Son of a...
And that water is heated by, well, they say it's heated by a dragon's fire beneath the earth. And the Grey King's halls, they were warmed by Naga's living fire as well. So we've got, there's a lot there with the
Extensive
Starks.
parallels. Wow. You got me. You got me with those.
Watery Hall's one was like, oh yeah, wow, I didn't get that.
Getting-
And they're both castles are big anthropomorphic beings as well. With that water pumped through the walls of the Winterfell is described as it's like blood through a man's body, sort of painting the castle as this living being, exactly like the Grey King's castle or hall was a living being as well. And you know, all the symbolism of dragons under Winterfell and the sea dragon, and yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, there's also some cool stuff with Bran. When he's in his coma, his rib cage is rising and falling in a way that's described like Naga's ribs. There's a parallelism that's drawn there.
Yeah, is it something like skin over spears, or they look like spears bursting through? I can't remember. I have to look at that quote again. But yeah,
it's in my Bran essay that I did like 6 years ago, so it's been a minute. But
yep.
Yeah, this is going to be that kind of stream, guys. Listen.
Get comfy.
We were preparing for this thing, and it was just a matter of like, how do we keep this going in 17 sideways directions? Because the truth is, this is all a web. It's a web. If we diagrammed it, it would look like bubbles and lines in between them all. And we're trying to make it a linear presentation as best we can. So bear with us on the the loop-de-loop. But
jumping.
We did as much prep as possible to try to go orderly through this. So we will start the stream soon, almost through the intro. And so the Bridge of Dream, that was outstanding. I feel like I need a cigarette. That was good. Okay, so I don't smoke. Bridge of Dream. Starts off obvious stuff. The River of Time. It's a river of time because they sail under the bridge and then they're sailing under it again. So they've done some sort of time loop. So this is a time river. And the bridge, of course, is a weir. The weir is a bridge. Hopefully, I don't want to explain it. A weir is a word for a wooden thing that spans a river that traps the fish. It's called a fish garth or a fishing weir. So it's like a bridge, and it spans the river. And Bloodraven talks about the weirwoods spanning the river of time, and so and so. Anything that's a bridge can be a weirwood symbol. The weirwoods also function as bridges between life and death. That's why there are all these doors. Yeah. Passing through the realm of dead. The moon door, the Eyrie. You go through it and you die. So
from black to white. Yeah.
Black to white. And so there's the Bridge of Dream. So the Weir of Dream, where you loop around on the River of Time. You see what we're doing here. Then we've got these stone men who are like wights or like some sort of statues or something. They are theoretically, supposedly, controlled by the Shrouded Lord, who might be Green Garen. And Green Garen is an incredible Garth parallel because he's Green Garen. It's Green Garth, almost the same name. A Garen is spelled with an O, is a horse. And of course, Yggdrasil is Odin's horse. The weirwood trees are like horses that the Green Seers ride, just like their ships that they sail. And Green Garen was hung in a cage. And Odin was hung on Yggdrasil, and the Green Seers are hung in the roots, with the roots around Bloodraven's neck. And they're also caged by the weirwoods. Mance Rayder in his weirwood cage is another parallel we don't have time to talk about. He's a green monster. He's on fire. Anyway. So
the Grey King's Hall was a rib cage as well.
So Green Garen's hung in a cage. He curses the Valyrians that are destroying the Rhoynar. And them who are the Lords of Fire, now their cold breath rises from the river, and they're the stone men. So we'll get into that part of it later. But basically, these are like wights or others that used to be fiery people, and now they're statues in the River of Time. So that's the basic idea. There's also a cool stone hand to give us more statue stuff. And the sorrows for the crying. I caught that one for you.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Very good.
Alyssa and the Eyrie. Take it away. Give me 30 seconds. My throat hurts.
Yeah, so I think going back to the crying stone woman we see in the Winterfell crypts and in the House of Black and White, you also find this in the Eyrie as well. We see a statue of Alyssa, who is another crying statue woman who lost her family, another another, just like Lady Stoneheart, turned to stone, lost her family. Lyanna, stone statue, lost her family. We see this a lot. And as we look through the Eyrie, we see a lot of black and white references again. We see, and in particular, we have Sansa, who becomes Elaine Stone in the Eyrie. This is where all that symbolism takes place, of her being trapped in a tower and becoming a stone person again. And she's trapped there by a symbolic Titan of Braavos, by Littlefinger, with his, his father's sigil being that the Titan yet again. And yeah, the Eyrie is very interesting as we go through that.
He's got a broken sword on the mantle. Right.
Yeah. He does. Yep. And it connects again to Winterfell, because she builds a Winterfell right there while they're in, it's very interesting stuff.
Which actually, let's pause. I want to capture this brainwave so I don't lose it.
Mm-hmm.
The crying woman is a Night's Queen. That's who we see in all these ones. In Winterfell, the Winterfell crypts are heavily inhabited or haunted by Lyanna, of course. That's the whole reason Robert and Ned go down there. A lot of talk about Lyanna waiting down there. She's down at the end, this and that. So when I saw Sansa build Winterfell and thought about it long enough, I was kind of like, wait a minute. Did Night's Queen found House Stark in some way? The stolen other baby gives us a means by which that's true. And that's just the theory that just as Sam rescued / stole Gilly's baby, Gilly and her baby, who, remember, Gilly's baby was supposed to be given to the others. And Gilly she's a Night's Queen figure because her children are turned into others, just like Night's Queen. But Sam, a heroic Night's Watchman, rescues one and takes it south of the wall instead. So Jon Snow, rescued by Ned from the Tower of Joy, brought home as raised as a Stark. It's a pattern. Theon, same thing. So it may be the case that there is the blood of the others in the bloodline of House Stark, because one of these children of Night's King and Queen might have been rescued by the last hero and brought back. And so we see that could be a way in which Night's Queen founded House Stark. All the Night's Queen characters, though, are implied as Starks or symbolic Starks. And I should pause a minute to promote my video that I'm going to put out tomorrow. White Walker Iceberg 2, edited. Those of you who accidentally saw a little bit of it this morning, I apologize. It wasn't supposed to be posted this morning, and it posted for 45 minutes. So a couple people saw it, and then it went away. I'm sorry. It'll be back tomorrow morning. But yes, Night's Queen, Eldric, I think she is a Stark to begin with, even before her baby is rescued or brought back to the Starks. And so I think there's a reason why, the Eyrie is an ice temple full of Night's Queen figures like Lysa and Sansa. And we see Alyssa, the statue, and Lyanna's statue in the crypts. Night's Queen is she's stuck in a frozen hell, but she also wants to come home. She wants to, just like Lyanna wanted to come home. So
yeah. And even Lysa, going back to that stolen...
But Eldric, give me your thoughts on this Night's Queen connection to the Starks. Where's your sense of what that really is?
So just to point out another connection with Lysa, we talked earlier about Robert Arryn being sort of like a Bran parallel, and there's actually a lot of her. She gets very upset because they're trying to take him away from her as well. So there's almost that they're trying to steal her son away, this sort of green seer son away from her, and that's what gets her upset. So it's that repeating symbol of the Night's Queen having that child taken from her. It's everywhere you look. I think it comes back to, and I'm open to this not being correct, but that scene we see at the what's potentially the origin of the Winterfell heart tree, that Bran, when he goes back through time and he witnesses that white-haired woman. So the white hair gives us almost like a Night's Queen, white skin, white hair, and she's got that moon sickle blade. Mm-hmm. And she's sacrificing to weirwoods. We know the others were probably linked to the weirwoods prior to the invasion of the weirwoods by Azor Ahai. I think this might have been, I'm not sure what happens and plays out. We don't get a lot of information. We just get a little snippet of that scene. So there's not a lot that can be drawn from it. But the white hair, the the sickle blade, and it's just the moon being a symbol for the Night's Queen, or the females in general. I think there's something in that scene, that sacrifice to that weirwood. And it's also interesting that Bran, he gets fed the weirwood paste, he gets fed blood by the white-haired snowy locks before he joins with the tree, and then travels back 8,000 years and then gets fed blood again by a white-haired, possibly children associated. So there's almost like two Brandons being fed blood by a white-haired child of the forest associated woman. That's interesting. There's something interesting in that as well. But yeah, I think there's something in that scene that it's going to be very interesting reading Bran's chapters moving forward as to how much he actually knows and how much we're actually going to get from him, because I think the origin of the Winterfell heart tree would be a very significant factor in the fact that the Starks are ones that brought the end to the long night, and the last hero was that Stark that went and gained magic to do so. And it seems like this might be where that magic first happened, where his blood then joined to the tree, and then his descendants protected that tree and changed to the old god's worship. I think that's a very crucial moment.
Yes, it's either an example of a moment that happened a bunch of times and is similar to the first sacrifices, or it could be the first sacrifice. It kind of works either way.
And that comes back to that either literal or symbolic suggestions of what we're seeing here. I'm open to it being either, obviously.
Well, in terms of classic mythology, like we're talking about some version of the triple goddess. When you see someone like Mary Mazdor or Melisandre conducting these sacrifice and resurrection ceremonies, like that's kind of the vibes we're going here. Baal and Astarte, the triple goddess and the green man, the horn god. That's kind of the vibes. And so
even Miri as well. When Miri resurrects Drogo, she has that leaf-shaped blade, and we see a King of Winter, a burning man, and a wolf dancing in the Tent of Shadows as well. So it's meant to draw that parallel for whatever reason it is. I'm unsure, but the thing with Drogo's resurrection is we actually see beings waking from stone at the end of that as well. Right while we've seen, the King of Winter symbol in that tent,
Yeah, so you're talking about the two shadows that Dany sees projected on the side of the tent. It's a wolf and a burning man. And then there's an echo of it in A Dance with Dragons outside of Bloodraven's cave, where Bran sees a wight on fire wrestling with Summer the wolf. And so it seems to be some sort of archetypal ice and fire version of that struggle that George likes to put at some of these crucial scenes. Yeah. And so it's kind of, this is probably a good place to say that, like, if you're still stuck on the others as the bad guys, you probably need to come off of that a little bit and see this more as they are the otherized side. From our perspective as flesh and blood humans, they are alien and inimical to our life. But to them, we are the same. And the extensive parallels between the wildlings and the others have really forced me to see that, like, reconciliation is the answer. The wildlings were cut off from the realms of men. They're no different, but they've been otherized, and Jon begins letting them back into the realm of men and saying, look, all the living need to band together. So it's the same thing with the others, in the sense that, like, if they're green men or green spirits that have been wronged or violated, they've got to be reconciled back to nature, and that's the answer. So when we're talking about the Starks, a lot of times the Starks parallel the others, and it's something that makes us think about that. Like, what function are they serving in the narrative? Are they just the big baddies that come and kill people? Like George specifically said, he doesn't like bad guys like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the name Other in general, just naming them others, definitely tells you that, like, you're very much right there, that they were otherized.
You briefly mentioned Stoneheart, and it hit me. The only two fire wights we see brought back are drowned first, or more accurately, their bodies are pulled from water. Is it something to do? No, yeah, absolutely. Beric is pulled from the river, and Stoneheart is pulled from the river as well. The green fork of the trident, which is like very clearly a green sea idea. Beric also resurrected in a grove of ash, famously. And of course, Yggdrasil is an ash tree, and the weirwood as a tree, like a burning bush tree that's on fire with the magic of the fire of the gods. It is an ash tree because it's on fire. It's producing ash. So the weirwoods are they're ash trees twice over because they're on fire and then because they're like Yggdrasil, the ash tree. So George uses ash trees as stand-ins for weirwoods. So when Beric Azor Ahai is resurrected in a grove of ash, that's the same idea as Bloodraven being the last ember of a dying fire, his eye inside the weirwood tree. There's this fire inside the weirwood tree. It's Azor Ahai. It's the ember in the ashes. And so that is why we see these fire wights. Yeah, they're drowned first. They come out of the green sea, but they also have fire. So this is the green monster thing. It's a combination of green magic and some sort of fire that creates these Night's Watch green zombie types. And so Stoneheart is the same. Beric is the same. Bloodraven is the same. Yeah, good call.
And even Beric, when he first in the Hollow Hill, when he first pulls out his fiery sword, it describes it as he's standing so still, it looked as if he was carved of stone. So there's another symbolic suggestion of that weirwood warrior with the flaming sword beneath the earth, with being made of stone yet again. And I think it plays into that Grey King's bless him with salt, so drown, bless him with stone person, and then bless him with steel. I'm not sure whether that means give him a weapon or whether that means sacrifice. I'm not sure, but yeah, that drowning and becoming stone-like, there's a lot of that.
It is. It's inevitably the same. It's the same pattern. Yeah, Beric is like a statue as well. He's like Bloodraven, who's a statue, but Beric is also carved from stone in one scene when he holds still. Earlier, Funny Times usually was talking about how the Corpse Queen, aka Night's Queen, was said to be the daughter of the Barrow King and potentially human. Well, if you want, I don't think Night's Queen was an other. I think she was more like Melisandre in that she's a human who converted through an elemental magic into a state where she could create others. She's the mother of the others, in my opinion. So as far as the House Barrowton or whatever, Dust House Dustin, again, is it a symbolic parallel or I don't know. But yeah, I'm not sure what the question is exactly. She might be human, yes. And I would check out the My Blood of the Others series. But I do think she is.
It's also interesting that Barbary Dustin sort of follows that Night's Queen in a way, and she ends up down the crypts lamenting the loss of her family as well.
Yeah, so Barbary Dustin is probably the right person to key in on. Absolutely. And she's got fiery eyes down there in the crypts. And then also, of course, the others being like the She are the people of the mounds. So having all those barrows and mounds in the north, he's using that to create allusions to the She. So the idea of the Night's Queen or Corpse Queen being a daughter of the Barrow King, that's sort of just like saying, well, yeah, she's a queen of the Barrow. She's a queen of the She. She's a queen of the spirits of the otherworld. So it's just sort of adding to our mythical impression of what kind of character she is.
And that's the hard part of deciphering what's literal and what's symbolic. And I think that suggestion of being the daughter of the Barrow King, like you said, it's more probably symbolic of the fact that she's a daughter of death nearly, or has that ability, or lives within the realms of death and can move within and out of it, maybe something like that.
So let's see here. And then at Crackclaw Point, this is a funny little echo, Crackclaw Point, because it's such a strong call out to Bran the Blessed. And Bran the Blessed is about a headless hero whose head is buried and whispers advice to people after he's dead. And of course, at the Whispers, Clarence Crabb and his Woods Witch wife collected heads, and they talked and gave advice to Clarence. But then Brienne figures out it's actually just the sea moaning through the caves and stuff, and crashing through the caves. So it's the green sea, It's the caves under the weirwood tree, because there's a weirwood tree at Crackclaw. And so this tells you this actually was an ancient hollow hill sacred spot where you had green seers underground. So this story about someone who was down there with heads getting advice from the dead, what does that sound like? It's the standard stuff. Then we have Shagwell jumping out of the tree. There's your fool. And he's got a triple morning star. So we've seen that with just like the Titan is doing the, morning and evening heralding action, and his eyes are like stars. Here we have a morning star fool jumping out of the tree. And then Nimble Dick, of course, gets buried under there, right next to the tree, and they throw some dragons down in the grave, which is an interesting bit. But we'll come back to that. Go ahead.
The whispering heads idea is very interesting. I found the parallel back to the House of Black and White and to the Bloodraven's cave as well, that we've got heads beneath, or faces or heads beneath the earth that seem to be whispering things to people. If we go to the House in Black and White, when Arya's in the sanctum, she imagines the eyes watching her of the faces, and their lips seem to sort of move as if they're talking. And then Bran, when he's down in the Bloodraven's cave, he sees the children that are strapped to the weirwoods. Their lips seem to be moving as well. So there's almost this talking aspect to these beings beneath the earth as well.
I mean, that whispering is important. That's the communication of the green seers through the weirwood leaves. And then we see George using it, the whispering wood, where the Starks hide under the leaves and in the trees and then spring out as tree warriors. And then we see whispering sound at Old Town, where you have this white tower that symbolizes a weirwood. It's got all the knowledge at the top, and it's doing the Lightbringer aspect. And it's, so.
And the stone men on the Bridge of Dream are referred to as the Whispering Dead as well. They always refer to them as the Whispering Dead. So.
And yes, someone did say talking heads. Psycho killer. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? I went an octave too high. That was rough. Okay. So, I can play it on my bass, though. I can play the acoustic guitar version of Psycho Killer on my bass. Probably sound like crap. I haven't done it in years, but I used to be able to do it. Anyway. So, we talked about, well, we've been through, we've already mentioned most of these stone men parallels, but just real quick. The Greyscale people, the Ice Wights, the Unsullied, House Stark, all being stone people, the Kings of Winter. My mouse just quit working. Cool, that's fun. The Shrouded Lord, Stony Court, right? That's the other part of the Shrouded Lord mythology that we didn't mention. If you can make him laugh, he'll turn you into a statue, so you can augment his Stony Court. So he's got a court of statues. And then the original Valerians that were turned into Greyscale people. And then those Targaryen suits of armor and the dragon skulls under King's Landing. I've mentioned before that this is a very good Winterfell parallel. And it's easy to see because when Arya's down there in the dark, she compares it to the crypts. There's a spiral staircase in the crypts. Under Winterfell, there's a spiral that goes down the well that you have to go to get to the lower levels. The eyes of the dragon skulls seem to follow you, just like the Kings of Winter. And then Sansa sees suits of Targaryen armor. Eddard sees them too. That Eddard scene was crazy. We read through the whole thing. We were just going nuts. We're like, we can't do all this on the stream, but this is crazy. Read that one if you want to have some giggles. So these Targaryen suits of armor, they're hollow and empty. So these are people that have become no one, and yet their eyes are still tracking. And when Sansa goes down there after fleeing King's Landing, when she's doing her transformation stuff, she goes through there with a torch, and they seem to come to life, which is kind of like Stoneheart or Nissa Nissa, bringing these dead warriors to life.
And they're covered in scales as well. They're scaled armor, which I think sort of alludes to the grey scale, that scaly skin that people get when they become stone. Could be a reference to that as well.
Let me see if I can get my mouse working. I thought I just checked the super chats. Did I miss one? Oh, there was. A couple came in. I think the Night's Queen was Proto-Valyrian. So I really think it's Azor Ahai that's Proto-Valyrian and Night's Queen that's a Stark. That's over and over. That seems to be the pattern to me. But, there's Ogier
I would
the
agree.
Dane. We should talk about Ogier the Dane. just to confuse people a little more. Which I guess we're about to, because that's King Under the Mountain stuff. At Lona Wood, the symbolism and the stream overall are just killer. Keep up the awesome work, you guys. Good to see you, Alona, my Twitter friend. One of the nice people on Twitter. It's only a couple. I'm not one of them. All right, so King Under the Mountain, educate us, Eldric.
So this was the one thing that I, in doing research, thought I really need to make a YouTube channel about this and get this out to people. There's a motif that's sort of been observed over the centuries across cultures of the idea of a king asleep beneath the mountain, and the fact that he is not in fact dead, but he's asleep and he'll return to save us one day. I think it's a commentary on the psychology of people as well. You know, wishing for the king that they loved to come back and sort of save them from an otherized culture. That term seems to be used around this as well. But King and the Sleep in the Mountain stories, as I've written here, they involve legendary hero kings who are thought to be dead, but are in fact sleeping in an inaccessible place, normally beneath the earth, under a mountain, within a cave, or in some supernatural realm, which very much fits the crypts of Winterfell in every regard. The sleeping hero is normally a historical figure of some military consequence in the land where this is located. So he's saved this culture in the past, and now he's sleeping beneath the earth so he can save them once more. The dormant king normally sleeps beneath the earth with a retinue of soldiers as well alongside him. And it's said that he's waiting in undeath to be called back when the nation that he resides in is in great peril, for him and his retinue to come back. They're normally sleeping with a legendary sword as well, and sometimes they're called back with a horn, like King Arthur. We have that as well, but that's probably another line we could go down. But there's hundreds of examples of this motif playing out throughout history, and I've sort of pulled out some of the more relevant ones that just as an example. So King Arthur, he sleeps on Avalon. It's said that he's sleeping there with a retinue of soldiers, with Excalibur, his legendary sword, and he'll rise up once more to defend his nation as well. And Avalon itself being an island, very God's eye stuff.
I was going to say maybe that's why George likes to have some of his dragon lords stop by the Isle of Faces sometimes. That might be like a King Arthur thing, especially like Adam Valerion coming from the Isle of Faces to like come and save the day at the battle. But of course, the bigger idea is just Azor Ahai and the Weirwood Net. Is Arthur sleeping on Avalon? Go ahead.
Yeah, and like you said, Azor Ahai saved the realms of men from the last long night. And if so, he's obviously the hero from the previous one, and this plays into that idea that perhaps he'll wake up again, or some version of him, or a new version of him will wake up again to defend the realms of men. And it's a very common trope. Ogier the Dane was probably the next one that I'd listed. He's asleep beneath Kronberg Castle, I believe, and it's said that he's still alive, but his beard has grown down to the floor, which is something we see with Bloodraven, and his hair growing down to the floor as well. That seems to be specifically mentioned by George. But if we look at a photo of Ogier the Dane, there's a statue of him built in the castle, and he's a very king of winter right there. He's got the sword across the lap. He's got the big beard. He's seated on his throne, and yeah, this is
all he needs is a wolf. If he had a wolf neck, I mean, I even wonder if let me pull up the most recent Crypts of Winterfell art. It really looks like this.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's by Fran Vargas. Look at this guy.
Yeah, sword across the lap.
That's the same dude.
Yeah. And even the name, plagiarism.
He just needs a wolf.
He does, yeah. And the last name Dane as well. It obviously brings to mind the Danes and bringing the dawn and all those.
Right, and to go back to the question of who's the Valyrian and who's the Stark with these Knights Queen and Knights King and Last Hero, Bran the Builder. The important thing is that Last Hero is a Stark Dane. Like all the last hero people are Stark or Dane or some mixing of both, including Ned Dane, who's named after Eddard Stark. So this the idea is that the Danes are Azor High people. They are from the Great Empire of the Dawn. They are Valyrians, and so like there was a Valyrian who was one of these Starks and went into this Stark bloodline. I mean, that's if Azor High is Night's King, then that has to be true. But that's why I think. Well, it's one reason why I think Night's Queen is the Stark. And then when you go look at all the Night's Queen parallel figures, they are either Starks or implied Starks. So, Ogier the Dane, tell us a little about who Ogier the Dane is so we can see how this works.
I don't know the full, I don't have it listed here, this full history here. Let me just pull up a little bit more, but he's just an example of that. He resides beneath Kronberg Castle. It's a Danish legend. And it said that he sleeps here until someday when the country of Denmark is in its greatest peril, at which time he'll awake and save the nation once more. I haven't researched, I have, but I haven't listed anything significantly detailed. I just sort of ran through different examples of this motif that sort of played out through history. But yeah, he plays into that sleeping hero motif you can see there. Yeah.
Even the word Ogier is like reminds you, of course, of ogre, and it's like brings you back to the green monster idea.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, somebody's been trying to holler at me about Ogier the Dane for years. I don't think it was you. I think it was somebody else that's been bringing this up.
Nah, yeah, It's. I think seeing that picture, you just immediately think King of Winter straight away.
In some versions, Ogier travels to Avalon, ruled by King Arthur, and eventually becomes a paramour of Morgaine le Fay.
Oh, there you go.
All right, there's more here, but we've got a lot here, so we'll keep moving. But just yet another clue that the first King of Winter was an Azor High person. And again, they've got these red swords on their laps, and the Stark sword is a red sword that's a Lightbringer symbol. So
yeah.
And let's go back and grab this one super chat from a minute ago that I did skip. First of all, thank you, OK Cucumber. Thank you, Alana, again.
You.
And then, could the pregnant woman praying for a son to avenge her, who Bran sees be Night's Queen? If not, who do you think she or the child is? Well, that would be, we know who that is, don't we? Have a good idea? Well, probably Sarah Snow, right?
I think so, yeah. But I think it is symbolic to suggest that Correct. Of her. Yeah. So,
and so is Sarah Snow herself. Yeah.
Yes,
name,
absolutely. Yeah, the Pact of Ice and Fire.
A snowy Night's Queen. Like,
yeah.
Salty, sweet Caroline. So bless you with salt, bless you with sweet, and bless you with sweet Caroline.
Neil Diamond.
Okay. Sorry, everyone who's now got that in their brains. Mods, can we do hot tea spoilers? Yeah, you're fine. Dude, we've always been spoilers in the chat. It's only whenever we do no spoilers, it's just for the host talking. The chat is, y'all do what you want. So let's talk about Winterfell. Let's start the stream now, Eldric.
Can I just go through one more of those King asleep in the mountain motifs?
Oh, sure.
Pretty relevant one. Constantine the 11th Paleologos was a Roman emperor, and he was the last Roman emperor, I think. And he was there at the fall, and I've lost my quote. So he was in that last battle. He had a broken sword. His sword broke, and he used that broken sword to just sort of defend himself. He ended up dying, but the people really loved him so much that this motif came up again, and there became this myth and theory that he was actually turned to stone, and he became known as the Marble King. So that and then once he was turned to stone, he was placed behind the wall, and then when it was I haven't got the exact quote in front of me, sorry mate, but when that city was once again in peril, he would rise up again as a stone king and defend his nation. And that time in that time was heralded by a great star in the sky, which is exactly what we see with Azor Ahai and the star in the sky with Dany. And yeah, I thought that was an excellent parallel that he literally was thought to have turned to stone and was hidden behind a wall, which I think plays into the idea of the bottom level of the crypts being collapsed. Behind that collapsed section,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's hidden for a reason, and I think it's because they're not statues; they're stone people. I think, and it would probably scare the shit out of someone if they went down there and went, "Oh, no."
Yeah, don't go messing with them.
Yeah,
Rickett will be back there. Well, it's friggin' Arya. She's plucking the worm from the if she met
yeah.
Bloodraven, she'd be like messing with his eyeball root. He'd be like, "Don't touch my eye root, child."
Can't even move the arms to. Just,
Okay. All right. That was
Anyway.
good. That was good. So it's King Out of the Mountain and Sun Wukong. We also mentioned that is another character that George has cobbled some Azor Ahai mythos from. Is also born from a stone and under the mountain. And then there's Mithras, stone-born, who's born from the stone egg with a sword and a torch. George specifically references Mithras a lot with Jon and also Bran and Hodor wandering in the caves. And Hodor is probably the best King of Winter parallel that we see, besides maybe Jon, Robb, and Hodor, I guess, are the three that do it. And Hodor, of course, Hodor from Norse myth is a god of winter. And so then we see Hodor from the story mimicking a king of winter. He takes one of their swords. He gets frozen snot in his beard, which gives him a snow beard, like Edric Snowbeard, King of Winter. And he gets one of his eyes frozen shut, which gives him ice eyes, like another King of Winter, as well as the one eye Odin treatment. So Hodor's very important. And of course, Hodor has become no one. And he is piloted by a green seer. And so this is kind of the model that Eldric has stumbled upon, this pattern, that the statue men are the hand to the green seer's king. And so this model of the king and the hand, that what the king dreams, the hand builds, the king eats, the hand takes the poo. It's this symbiotic weird thing that George has created. And it's really a riddle about the green seers. The green seers are immobile. They're in their thrones. So they need hands. They need animals and people and other things to carry out their will. And so we see this model with Bran. He's the green seer, he's immobile, and he's using Hodor. Hodor's carrying him around physically, and then he's using Hodor's body to fight, to potentially try to touch Mira. Don't do that, please. And other things. And so Hodor is a king of winter. So maybe that's the idea here. These statues or the green zombies or whatever these original Starks were doing, where they lost their identity so they can be on standby to defend the living, it's going to involve them being tools of the green seers, right?
I agree with that. Yeah, and we even see Bran uses Hodor to burst out of the crypts as well. When they escape at the end of Clash, he gets and we see that rumbling as it sort of explodes from beneath the earth as well. And it plays into that thing that you've raised before, Dave, of the green boys and grey beards of the Night's Watch as well. You know, we've got these green children, and they seem to be using the grey people or grey beards, or that someone who's been stripped of their colour, their life, their identity to become no one, and then they use them as almost like a stone puppet. It's and there's an interesting line of symbolism which we could spend hours on, of the toy as well, of using the toy. We see Robert Arryn at Winterfell controlling a giant and using that giant to...
Yes. And Robin Arryn, he sits on Weirwood throne and has these fits and drinks Weirwood paste porridge. And obviously uses a Bran parallel.
Uses a giant, and the giant knocks down the walls of Winterfell, a bit like with the Titan standing over the walls of Winterfell. And
so let's since we're talking about it, let's flip over to Hodor, King of Winter. Sir Roderick should teach me to use a poleaxe. This is Bran. If I had a poleaxe with a big long haft, Hodor could be my legs. We could be a knight together. I think that unlikely, Maester Luwin said. Bran, when a man fights, his arms and legs and thoughts must be as one. But of course, this is what happens with Bran and Hodor. So this is obvious foreshadowing. And in the same chapter, we hear the story of, "There was a knight once who couldn't see," Bran said stubbornly as Sir Roderick went on below. "Old Nan told me about him. He had a long staff with blades at both ends, aka a double poleaxe, and he could spin it in his hands and chop 2 men at once." "Simeon Star Eyes," Lewin said as he marked numbers in a book. "When he lost his eyes, he put star sapphires in the empty sockets, or so the singers claim. Bran, that is only a story, like the tales of Florian the Fool, a fable from the age of heroes." The maester tisked. "You must put these dreams aside. They will only break your heart." So, we have this idea of a knight who couldn't see, but he's still fighting. How's he fighting? Well, maybe there's a green seer controlling him. Maybe this is a cold hands figure. And furthermore, Simeon Star Eyes is kind of like a weirwood tree come to life. He's a model of the cosmic axis. It's kind of a giveaway because he's in the middle and he's spinning something that's got 2 blades and they're spinning around him. So he's the axis, like the world tree. He's got star eyes like the ice dragon, which is the North Star. And the whole concept of the North Star is it's the top of the world tree. It's the top of the cosmic axis. Everything appears to turn. The canopy of the stars turns around the pillar that terminates at the North Star. So Simeon Star Eyes is a world tree. Those blades are the moons, and he's spinning them around. And so he went to the wall to see the hellhounds fight, right? Well, the hellhounds fight in this same chapter down in the crypts, and their shadows are on the wall and the ceiling and stuff. So there's something about Simeon Star Eyes and whatever happened at the wall and the Starks, and I'm not sure exactly what it means, but thematically, we can see that there's something going on in this whole chapter where we're talking about Hodor and Bran fighting as one, Simeon Star Eyes, who's fighting without eyes, and he's like a tree warrior. And then we finally go down into the crypts and we see the actual direwolf hellhounds fight with each other.
And that star eyes plays into the Titan of Braavos yet again with his eyes that were stars. The Stranger, I think we talked about as well, having those star eyes. And yeah, the stars for eyes is an interesting one. Obviously, it represents the others as well.
I would say God of Death, probably. Like you say, the weirwoods are the gods of death, and so are the others. So is the Stranger. That's kind of the theme. So is Azor Ahai becomes a god of death at once he takes power. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see here. And then Shaggy Dog, he's the green monster. He's like the Night's Watch, and he's like a green monster. The darkness sprang at him, snarling. Bran saw eyes like green fire again, a flash of teeth. Was it your Lightbringer flash, light in the darkness. Fur as black as the pit around them. So think of the pit in Bloodraven's cave, and think of the raven's feathers being compared to the black of the abyss. And then, of course, the Black Brothers cloaked in black, shadows in black. So it's a green fire monster cloaked in black, leaping out of the crypts, out of the empty black hole of the sepulcher to attack. And then we see Rickon standing in the hole to Eddard's crypt saying, "You leave my father be." So he's like protecting the family, this green monster.
Yep. And we have that Stark spring out of the darkness and rise up from the darkness, sort of as if he's called out nearly. One thing that I didn't realize about the crypts is how tall the roof must be if we've got 20-foot shadows on the wall. I pictured it as quite a claustrophobic crypt, but that's quite a tall ceiling.
It's cavernous. Actually, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's massive.
Shadow wolves, 20 feet tall, fought on the wall and roof. So Simeon Star Eyes went to the wall to see the hellhounds fight. So this is very clearly a call out to the legend. We see the wolves on the wall fighting, and we just got the Simeon Star Eyes legend. So Simeon Star Eyes has something to do with Starks and skin changers and fighting with wolves or shadow wolves, which the Night's Watch basically are shadow wolves, piloting them. This is all about this remote control warrior thing.
Yep.
So that beast is supposed to be chained up in the kennels. I let him loose. He doesn't like the chains. Well, Bran is also a chained wolf in Jojen's vision, and the chains are stone, as you pointed out.
Yes, yeah.
which
An
is kind
unusual
of like saying
detail.
the statues are like the stone chains holding the spirits
Mm.
in or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's an unusual comment for the chains to be stone, so it feels deliberate. There's something in that. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you read this? Yeah, let's keep going with this Hodor stuff. Or read from "The Snow is Falling" and read these Hodor quotes.
Yep. Sorry, one
Is the
second.
screen easy enough for you to read? Is it big enough?
Yep. The
Okay.
snow was falling again, wet and heavy. Hodor walked with one eye frozen shut, his thick brown beard a tangle of hoarfrost, icicles drooping from the ends of his bushy moustache. One gloved hand still clutched the rusty iron longsword he had taken from the crypts below Winterfell, which
Oh,
is
and he also makes a habit of hitting frozen trees with it.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
attacking the yeah. It's an interesting because I think this is the chapter opening where he then eventually controls Hodor to fight the others as well. So we have this symbol of Hodor being that king of winter with the one eye frozen shut, giving us the one eye of Azor Ahai, but also the frozen eyes of Brandon Ice Eyes, that constant, and then he has that beard of snow, which Edric Snowbeard. So it's a very clear call out, and he's literally carrying one of the swords of the Kings of Winter, and it's a rusty red sword. So we've got this red sword. He's holding it. He's this giant man, one eye, frozen beard, and
It's
Bran
all
uses
there.
him.
It is all
Yeah,
there. Go ahead. Yeah.
and Bran uses him as a puppet to fight on his behalf. And I need to reread that chapter again because I think that there's something when he hits his head and the whole world turns black and white. I could be
It spins.
misremembering
The
that.
world is spinning around him, so it's more
Yeah,
cosmic axis stuff. He's the giant. That's the yeah. It's the same idea.
yeah. And then
So
he
real
sees
quick.
that.
Oh, sorry. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Oh, then he sees that burning white and the dancing wolf in Hodor's skin. So that's that King of Winter with the direwolf symbol again at the time when Bran's controlling a King of Winter and his direwolf again. It's sort of same chapter, very deliberately drawing parallels between the two. Yeah.
And they're fighting to get into Bloodraven's cave, fighting against wights with cold hands, another zombie Night's Watchman. So it's all right there, as I say. So right now, I was waiting for this moment. My very good friend from Australia, Minty Maelstrom, #1 mod, has logged into the chat, and she's asking, WTF, is this guy from Perth or something? You're from Adelaide, right?
I am, yeah. You picked
Okay.
the accent. Well done.
So just this is Minty. This is your Australian A Song of Ice and Fire representation. Oh, I guess there is that other guy. X. What's his name? Shift. Some keyboard.
Swift
It's really
something.
that name.
I don't know. Never heard of him.
Anyway, there's a couple Ice and Fire fans down under. Yes.
Got Glimbus as well. Oh, Glidus.
Yeah, Glidus. I guess. Yeah, we should give Glidus a normal shout out. XSW who? Yeah, Shift Alt Control Delete, something like that.
Alt J. I can't remember.
We love those guys. All right, so go ahead with the Hodor coming out of the crypts, because remember, this whole idea about the Kings of Winter is part of the idea is that they're gonna, in some sense, come out of the crypts, and so here we have Hodor, future King of Winter, opening the door with the screaming hinge and everything.
Yeah, that screaming hinge is interesting. So open the door, Hodor, Bran said. So Bran's asking him to open the door. The huge stable boy put both hands flat on the door, pushed and grunted. Hodor, he slammed a fist against the wood. It does not so much as jump. Hodor, use your back, urged Bran, and your legs. Turning, Hodor put his back to the wood and shoved. Again. Hodor, he put one foot on the highest step so he was bent under the slant of the door and tried to rise. So the door's slanted almost as if it's not an upright door. We're sort of talking a slanted, flat-ish door. He put one foot on the highest step, bent under the time. This time the wood groaned and creaked. Hodor, the other foot came up the step, and Hodor spread his legs apart, braced and straightened. His face turned red, and Bran could see the cords in his neck bulging as he strained against the weight above him. Hodor. From above came a dull rumble. Then suddenly a door jerked upward and a shaft of daylight fell across Bran's face, blinding him for a moment.
So
So,
look, I have to say, the fact that we've all read this passage for years and years and no one figured out that Hodor's name is a contraction of hold the door, which I don't believe
yeah,
anyone did. If they did, that did not get out. When that came out on the TV show, everyone that I knew was like, oh, God, of course. And then my other friend, one of my other Mythhead friends, I don't know if it was Rusted Revolver or somebody, figured out that his original name being Walder means that that's just a play on wall door, and that the door he's going to hold may well be a door in the wall, either the Black Gate door or another one. And so this gets back to the underground river thing. Maybe Hodor will make it out of Bloodraven's cave and he'll be holding a door all the way at the Nightfort. Or maybe it'll just be a weird door like that face that he holds that is similar and leads back to the Nightfort. But yeah, I mean, this stuff where it's just like, Hodor, open the door. And it's like, Hodor, 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 the door opened. It's like, how do we not get this?
no, it's it's well done. It's very well done, and it's that Bran not literally controlling a king of winter to burst out from, but he's asked him to do so. He said, Hodor can do this for us.
Oh no, he's instructing
so,
him. He's like, put your back into it, bend, almost as if he was piloting him. And that's what he's doing.
Actually,
yes.
Yep.
And I like
true.
that he put his back against the wood. Like, that's the sacrifice position. Your back against the weirwood tree.
Yeah, it was seated in the throne of the wood.
Right, in the throne.
As well.
So that's how you open the door. Do you see like what a mad psychedelic writer George is, guys? Like, he's got Hodor trying to rise and push, but he's also putting his back against the door, which implies him as seated, but he's like, it's
incredible.
Take
I think
drugs,
a really
fellas.
good
The right ones. The right ones. No, don't. Wait. Demonetized. No, don't do drugs unless they're legal. In any case, drugs are a metaphor for books. You should read books. Expand your mind.
The line that I picked up on that was interesting in this is the dull rumble that occurs as he bursts out. From above came a dull rumble. And to me, that's very lightning symbolic. And it brings to mind, and there's a whole video, we probably won't go down this rabbit hole of the hammer of the waters and lightning being a symbolic hammer, waking giants in the earth. Well, we see this lightning and rumbling as this giant wakes from beneath the earth.
Well, no, a minute later after they get out, Osha says, we made enough noise opening the door to wake a dragon.
Yeah.
Which refers to Jon, but the noise is loud, is to your point.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hodor is like Eldric's Faceless Man, God of Many Faces theory. It's so obvious in hindsight.
He has been made no one. I think that's what you're getting at. As in, he's one of those people.
So we figured this out yesterday. So we were reading the passage here, this chapter, and this is the one where Bran's like, yeah, Hodor wouldn't go down into the crypts. I almost hit him. And Lewin's like, he's not a mule to be beaten. But Hodor is terrified. He won't go down into the crypts. He eventually does, but he wouldn't before. And so obvious answer to this is that when the Hodoring happened, the young boy Hodor, because remember, the TV show, something like what we saw on TV is going to happen. That's one of the things Dave and Dan said. That was they were surprised. That was from George. And so if young boy Hodor was down in the crypts at the moment of the Hodoring, that would explain why he is always terrified of the crypts. It could be that the door that Hodor holds is actually down under Winterfell somewhere. Like they made it all the way back there, and then he held the door or something. But more likely, I think it's young Hodor that was down in the crypts when the time link happened and his brain was fried. Which means, point of this, is that Hodor potentially went down into the crypts and became no one. And that's kind of what Arya and Bran are doing. They go down into the darkness. It's really obvious with Arya, but Bran too. And that's where they open their third eye and slip their skin and wear other faces and all that stuff. Join the godhood and yada, yada, yada. So Hodor, King of Winter, it seems likely that he became no one in the crypts. And so this is what the original Kings of Winter were doing, right, Eldric?
Yes, that's what I think. Yep. They became no one. They became grey men to then, if someone becomes no one, they're more easy to control. And potentially that's what we're getting at here, is that all these grey people who were broken, a bit like Theon losing his identity and turning grey and then being used by Ramsay, and then you get the Unsullied who were broken and become no one and become stone-like, and then they're used and they lose their identity, and the Faceless Men lose their identity, become no one, and become an instrument of the god of death. And that's what I think this is something I picked up on just chatting with you in the last few days, is that the idea of making someone become no one and breaking them down, it means they're more easy to control potentially and body snatch. I think that's potentially what we're getting at here with all these ideas.
And the difference is that in some, with the ice wights, they're not given a choice. Whereas some of these other people are choosing to make this sacrifice, with various levels of, now obviously with Bran and Arya, they're children. And so when we're looking at the story, it's still coercive. Like, Arya being recruited to, the kindly man says, oh, he's going to take all your parts. Are you okay with that? Like, what does that even mean? How's an 11-year-old girl supposed to understand that? Like, yes, obviously there's some issues there. And the same thing with Bloodraven. Bloodraven, his, he's kind of the ends justify the means. Like, if we have to use children, that's fine. But Bran he's born with the magic that we need. So come on down to the cave, Bran. This is what we got to do. He may have even conspired, to help Bran fall in some ways. Some people think that is the case. So in order to go through this whole process, because Bloodraven sees the future, etc. So yeah, that's a little dark. But the point is, they are still choosing. They are choosing to become. And on a greater level, the difference here is between people who choose to give up selfish desires or personal aspirations and to submit to the will of the greater good or the group or something like that, versus groups that absorb people through predatory means. And so when we talk about these original Stark Kings of Winter, they're going down there and making this sacrifice for some reason. They are going down there and becoming no one so that they can be the tools of the Green Seers, essentially.
And that's what I think comes back to potentially the last hero and his 12 companions. Perhaps his 12 companions did exactly what you just said and chose to become no one so they could become the puppet of the last hero, potentially. So he had his 12 resurrected green zombies that maybe he was controlling them. Maybe that's what was going on. They became no one when they took the black gave their name away and became no one as they joined the first Night's Watch. Something like that, maybe.
But there's one thing that I noticed as I'm thinking about this, is that the people who choose to become part of a collective, they always retain some of their individuality still. Like Bloodraven is still Bloodraven. Arya still hides Needle and still remains Arya Stark, and the Faceless Men are promoting her anyway. She's definitely still Arya. So there may be something where it's like, it's actually a partnership that George is trying to hold up as the better thing. It's like you give up yourself first and you humble yourself. You submit to the will of the collective. That doesn't necessarily mean you become a zombie and become a no one. It just means you're working in concert. You become part of a symbiotic organism of some kind. Teamwork, if you will. I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, I think so too. This is all pretty new. We're sort of uncovering this as we go. But even John as well, sort of willingly submitting to become no one and join the Watch and forego his name and all that. But he's still John and he still wants Winterfell deep down and he's still a Stark and he's, you're right.
And it matches George's personality. He's a hippie and he's obviously a very relatively enlightened person, as far as like there's a lot of philosophy in here, different philosophies and viewpoints. In order to write this kind of he's a brilliant guy, okay? But he's also, and like I said, an ex-hippie, Grateful Dead fan. He but he's also like morbid. He's a horror writer. He obviously loves very dark, twisted stuff. So he's like, how do I take this very positive message of like, you know, don't be selfish, humble yourself, join the group, make humanity better, try to make the world better. That's what he says. His heroes are the people who try to make the world better. But how do you portray that in a story that it wants to feel grim and horrific and stuff? It's this kind of stuff. Like the metaphor of joining the collective is really twisted. We've got wights and green seers with rotting into the trees, and Arya turning into a killer, and the wolf pack idea, kind of. You know, the pack versus the lone wolf. I guess that's another version of that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It might be George's commentary on joining the collective, but you still need to retain that individuality just in real life, just for yourself, to be who you are, but still be part of the collective at the same time. It's interesting. I'm not really sure where he's going with it, but we do see, a lot of that being suggested. Retaining that individuality, but still being part of that collective. But, you know, if you submit yourself to the collective too much, you do become no one. You just become another.
Right. That's right. The warning that's given to Bran about losing yourself, right?
Yeah. Yep. So that's that could be potentially what he's getting at here. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, I knew we were going to get into the philosophy of this at some point, so that was a good shot. Let's start
the stream.
What can we even say? I knew it was going to be like this. I think people are entertained, and there's 570 people watching right now. So
good number,
people are hungry. They're eating what we're serving. So let's do it. Let's take a drink and.
I think probably before we go through and just point out to everyone as we read through these, look for the symbols that connect them all, the connective tissue between these areas. And we're going to see statues, we're going to see black and white references, we're going to see crying stone women, we're going to see weirwood caves. You know, just keep an eye out for all this connective tissue, and it will all it tells you more as you go through. Found some interesting stuff.
It's just the power of the text. It really. The language, it speaks for itself. So, famous Robert and Ned at Winterfell, early in a Game of Thrones. I've never seen such a vast emptiness. Where are all your people? Likely they were too shy to come out, Ned jested. He could feel the chill coming up the stairs, a cold breath from deep within the earth. Kings are a rare sight in the north. More likely they're hiding under the snow. Snow, Ned. Okay, so this is about Jon, but forget about Jon for a second. Robert is making a joke that I didn't see your people. Where are they? They're hiding under the snow. They're too shy. They're hiding under the snow. So what kind of people hide under the snow? Ice wights. We've seen that, right? At Bloodraven's cave. They sleep, they lay down, they sleep, and then when the others need them too, they pop up. So the people under the snow are wights. Winterfell's dead, who aren't the Starks, are buried in the Lichard. In the yard there, so they are under the snow right there. So Winterfell's people are dead people. That's the point. And then in between, a cold breath from deep within the earth. Kings are a rare sight. It's like, oh yeah, those kings, they don't come out of the earth often. They're a rare sight, but it does happen sometimes.
Every now and again, and that breathing from beneath the earth. That symbolically, there's life down there, or there's something down there breathing. Yeah, it's such good language.
Little Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So take us, swing the lantern through the crypts here real quick.
So as Ned and Robert get down into the crypts, we get this interesting line or paragraph. It says, he swept the lantern in a wide semicircle. Shadows moved and lurched. Flickering light touched the stones underfoot and brushed against a long procession of granite pillars that marched ahead 2 by 2 into the dark. Between the pillars, the dead sat on their stone thrones against the walls, back against the sepulchres that contain their mortal remains. She's down the end with Father and Brandon. And the line that I was picking up on here was a long procession of granite pillars marching ahead 2 by 2 into the dark. To me, and we actually see this repeated 3 times. We go down to the crypts 4 times throughout the whole books. And in 3 of those times, we see this same language repeated. And it's almost like a symbolic army of stone men marching into the darkness 2 by 2. So we get this stone army marching into the dark, a long procession of granite pillars. So that's with Ned. The second time, when we're with Bran in Clash, we hear this the same sort of language. He strode briskly down the vault, past the procession of stone pillars and the endless carved figures. And then once again with Theon and Barbary and Dance, there are lower levels, older. The lowest level is partially collapsed, I hear. I've never been down there. He pushed the door open and led them out into a long vaulted tunnel where mighty granite pillars marched 2 by 2 into blackness. So there's that, once again, we've got this symbolic stone army marching into the dark of the long night, potentially, rising up, marching into the darkness.
And they're endless. So it's like a collective. It's infinity.
Yeah.
So it's pretty. And then also the other thing about the pillar. Remember, I said Simeon's star eyes represents the cosmic axis. That's a pillar, and frequently it's often a tree. It's often a tower, and it's often depicted as an omphalos, a navel stone. That's a very common mythical archetype, the navel stone of the world, all over the place. It's so common. And so Simeon's star eyes, he's probably named after Simon Peter, the apostle of Jesus, because he not only does Simon mean the rock, or is it Peter that means rock? Petra. I think it's Peter that means rock. And Jesus talks about Simon Peter as the rock upon which he will build his church. Someone correct me if I have got that screwed up. So the idea is that Simeon star eyes, he is a pillar, he is a tower, he is a tree, he is all those things. And so here we have these pillars, these stone pillars, who are really analogous to this endless procession of the Stone Kings. They're ready to march into the darkness. So it's a nice Simeon star eyes. Because remember, the Simeon star eyes thing came in the chapter where they went down to the crypts and saw the hellhounds fighting down in the crypts. So where did Simeon star eyes see the hellhounds fighting? Well, probably in the weirwood net. This fight inside the crypts. In fact, I should have mentioned this to you yesterday, Eldric. I went on a tangent a long time ago, but never turned this into a podcast. There is a pattern of a fight within the weirwood net, and it is a hellhound fight. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the fights are like that. And so that is why I think it's probably going to be Bran inside the weirwood net, being a knight of the mind and fighting something. I don't know if Jon or Dany will get in there too, or if it's just going to be Bran, maybe Bran and Bloodraven. But there's going to be a fight in the weirwood net. And this is something the show probably got from George, the whole thing of Night King seeing Bran and grabbing his arm. That's based on something that George told them, I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see it being Bran, 100%. Yep.
The Clegane Bowl. Because remember, Clegane Bowl is not just something that might happen. It already did. They already did fight at the tourney in a Game of Thrones. So that was hellhounds fighting. And if we go back and look, I think we'll find something there. And then Joffrey talks about sending his dog, Sandor, to kill Bran. Send a dog to kill a wolf. Sandor talks about what dogs do to wolves. It's a thing.
I actually completely forgot all about Gregor Clegane, the mountain, the giant stone man.
He's a stone giant, sure is.
Yeah, he's got the wolf, well, not wolves, but 3 dogs sigil, reminiscent
Cerberus.
of the Stark.
Yeah, he's a hellhound. That's a Stark.
And when he's resurrected, he comes back as Robert Strong, and with Strong means Stark in German. So you've got a Rob Stark, giant stone man. It's everywhere. But anyway,
and he becomes snowy. He joins the Kingsguard, so he becomes icy and snowy, like a ice white or an ice statue or whatever you want to say.
And he's going to fight on behalf of someone. I think that's another thing. He's had his personality erased. Yeah, he's nowhere. Yeah, and he's that combat, that what do they call it again? My brain's slipping. The trial by combat. Trial by combat. That's what I keep getting at. We keep seeing him arise in that trial by combat, and he's fighting on behalf of Cersei, and she's described as a child during that scene when he's fighting on behalf of her. And
he carries her like a child, even when at the end of her walk of shame.
And it's almost
he carries
like
her back into the castle. In fact,
so it's almost like he is her stone man giant that she can use to fight on her behalf as well.
I mean, Dunk and Egg is another version of it. Brienne and Pod, like we've seen it over and over and over again. Fagon has as Drink.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and Dunk, fighting on behalf of a child, and he's compared to a castle wall, like a stone wall, several times.
He's compared to a tree. He's the gallows knight, so he's like a dead knight.
Yeah.
And he talks about how he's not clever, he's not smart, So it's like,
true.
And he's Hodor's ancestor.
He's Hodor. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man.
It's endless. That's what I said. It's a web. The more you put together, the more you find to put together. And that's why people that are like, just find my channel, there's a certain percentage of them that react like, dude, I like some of your stuff, but sometimes, man, you're just seeing the shapes in the clouds, man, I'm like,
nah.
Just stick around. Just stick around, read the text, just be patient, it'll all emerge to you. So
it does.
Let's see here. Lords of Winterfell watched them pass. Their likenesses were carved into the stone that sealed their tombs. In long rows they sat, blind eyes staring out into eternal darkness, while great stone direwolves coiled around their feet. The shifting shadows made the stone figures seem to stir as the living passed by. So it's the living passing by that make them come alive. We see that a lot. It's their torches or their life fires that animate the statues. By ancient custom, an iron longsword had been laid across their lap to keep the vengeful spirits in their crypts. So it's telling us right there. George sometimes does tell us a lot of things very directly, but makes it sound like silliness so that we disregard it. And this is one of those cases. Like, no, there are vengeful spirits. They're in there, and there is some sorcery keeping them at bay that will at some point be broken so they can come out.
Yeah.
The oldest had rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rested on stone. So there's a red sword, Lightbringer parallel. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He hoped not. The first lords of Winterfell had been men hard as the land they ruled. So like stone, if you will.
Yeah, there's a lot of references to the early Starks being hard men for a hard time. I think that's an excellent play on words George is using, as if they were literally stone men to defeat for the long night. And
then we'll just grab the highlighted section. Blind stone eyes seemed to follow them. Black holes waiting for the dead were the empty tombs. So there's these ideas, the black hole. It's really talking about the cosmic void, the womb tomb. That's the idea. It's the darkness from which the dead go, the living, the new are reborn from it, like three-headed trios. That's the meaning of all these black ponds. Things are going in and coming out. Where's the bottom? This is the void. This is, like I said, the cosmic womb and tomb.
The black gate of the weirwood, you could even say, going into that black gate, to walk into the black, take the black, go inside the darkness. Yeah.
And you made a great point that the black pond beneath the Winterfell heart tree creates a mirrored effect where you have the white tree above, and then in the reflection you have the black tree. And Bran even notes that the weirwood tree is looking at him in his vision when he's flying around doing his astral projection thing, and the reflection of the tree is in the pond. So it's an intentional thing.
Brings to mind the House of Black and White's weirwood door with the black face and the white face of the wood. It's once again black and white. Yeah.
And it's also as above, so below, which we see a bunch of that mirroring, the tree branches and then the branches of the caves below. It's just a mirrored symbol. Most of the Yggdrasil pendants look like that, in fact.
Yes. Yep.
So, Lord Rickard Stark, Ned's father, had a long, stern face. The stonemason had known him well. He sat with quiet dignity, stone fingers holding tight to the sword across his lap, but in life all swords had failed him. So Eldric grabbed this quote because it's being described as if he's really sitting there. He sat with dignity, like his hands are, he sounds like Rickard is really there. And there's more of that with Lyanna too. Robert threw his head back and roared with laughter. The echoes rang through the darkness, and all around them the dead of Winterfell seemed to watch with cold and disapproving eyes. Finally, the laughter dwindled and stopped. Ned was still on one knee, his eyes upraised. Damn it, Ned, the king complained. You might at least humor me with a smile. They say it grows so cold up here in winter that a man's laughter freezes in his throat and chokes him to death, Ned said evenly. Perhaps that's why the Starks have so little humor. So the Starks are frozen people. They're all dead. You know, again, frozen as statues in death is what happens to them. Come south with me, I'll teach you how to laugh again, the king promised. You helped me win this damnable throne. Now help me hold it. We were meant to rule it together. Now, Eldric pointed out that this is a parallel to ornamenting the stony court of the Shrouded Lord, because you have to make the Shrouded Lord laugh. Patchface taught him to laugh. And then he makes you a stone statue to ornament his court. And Robert's like, I'll teach you to laugh, and then you'll ornament my court. So it's some kind of parallel. But again, the Shrouded Lord might be Green Garen. So Green Garen, a green man like Garth, and then the Shrouded Lord is the death version. And we see Robert sort of transitioning here. He is representing the Summer King, but he's obese, he's corrupt, he's near death, summer's almost over, and he's actually looking like the Stone Kings. He's, for a moment, Ned's like, oh, he looks like a Stark statue when he loses his humor.
And that teaching to laugh aspect of the Shrouded Lord, the boon that he said to gift, if you can make him laugh, is to give him your grey kiss. And then once he gives you the grey kiss, which is Greyscale, you can then ornament the stony court. So it's more turning to stone, being taught to laugh. Even Stannis, another Azor ahai, we see him suggested as stone quite a bit. He is stone, she is flame, and he's humorless. We can't teach him to laugh either.
Patchface was supposed to teach him to laugh, though. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot in there for sure.
So that's a good one for your idea that Greyscale may have been originally a magical technique to help people turn into statues in a way that preserves their awareness.
Yes.
This is a great one for that. Like, yeah.
Because Robert has chosen Ned, a grey man, to become his hand, which goes back to that stone hand, the green man controlling his stone hand. And, you know, I can teach you how to laugh and you can ornament my stony court. It's incredible.
And even the laughter is back to the fool stuff, you know.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, it reminds me of the Night of the Laughing Tree as well. If you can make a weirwood laugh, you get a boon as well. I don't know if there's anything in that, but teaching a tree to laugh, I have to think about that.
Well, and Lyanna was teaching a lesson as the Knight of the Laughing Tree. She was teaching, her, as she said, teacher squire's honor. Like, that's all that I request to the knights that she defeated. So there's something going on there. For a moment, Eddard Stark was filled with a terrible sense of foreboding. This was his place here in the north. He looked at all the stone figures all around them, breathed deep in the chill silence of the crypt. He could feel the eyes of the dead. They were all listening, he knew, and winter was coming. So just more of the same stuff. They're all listening. The Night's Watch is a shadow of what it once was. It's just a random line in the chapter that's a cool Night's Watch, shadow, death, stuff. Go ahead and read this one about Lyanna.
His eyes lingered on Lyanna's face as if he could will her back to life. Finally, he rose, and this is Robert, made awkward by his weight. Ah, damn it, Ned. Did you have to bury her in a place like this? His voice was hoarse with remembered grief. His voice was hoarse. She deserved more than darkness. She was a Stark of Winterfell, Ned said quietly. This is her place. She should be on a hill somewhere under a fruit tree with the sun and clouds above her and the rain to wash her clean. I was with her when she died, Ned reminded the king. She wanted to come home to rest beside Brandon and father. And I think this plays into that crying stone woman we constantly see, and the thought that maybe she was brought back here on purpose, and that she's not supposed to be here. Like Robert says, why'd you have to bury her in a place like this? She deserved more than the darkness. But it's almost as if she's trapped. This Night's Queen figure is trapped down here almost, and she wasn't meant to be here.
And that, of course, parallels the Eyrie, where Lysa is kind of trapped with Jon Arryn in a marriage she doesn't like, and she's doing a Night's Queen thing, and then Sansa's trapped there by Peter Baelish.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff about that.
Yeah, yep.
And before, I don't know if you ever heard this one. This is an old one from the Song of Ice and Fire fan boards, but Catelyn, so Arya becomes Cat of the Canals, and Sansa becomes Elaine Stone, and Elaine is Catelyn.
Yeah.
So he
He's
really
very clever with
encourages
it.
us to think about all three characters as like kind of the same archetype, and they all do follow a similar path.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, Sansa is in the Eyrie, in their Godswood, and she's like, "Oh, it doesn't have a weirwood tree. It's a Godswood without a gods. It's empty like me." Okay, so it's a Godswood, but it does have a weirwood symbol. It's Alyssa's statue. It's a stone woman. So it's like, but it's empty of the heart tree, and Sansa's got an empty heart, and she's turned to stone. She's Elaine Stone. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a perfect parallel. So Sansa very much is a statue and a prisoner Night's Queen woman in the Eyrie.
Yeah.
But she's going to break out. She's going to turn back into a Stark. She's going to wash the dye out and get her fiery red hair back and turn back into a Stark and tap into her magic. And this is all a suggestion that Night's Queen can escape somehow. And so right in the same passage, Ned talks about Lyanna wanting to come home. It's like, oh, Night's Queen wants to come home. So
Yeah. She's not where she belongs. And then, there's another line after, I think it's after, where the king, as in Robert, touched her cheek, his fingers brushing against the rough stone as gently as if it were living flesh. So it's painting this statue as being a living being.
And he's trying to resurrect it. He's a green man, and he's trying to will it back to life by touching it. So there's something about a green seer being able to make a statue come to life again. The same pattern.
Yep.
Then later, Robert mutters, "The others take my wife." So Lyanna, as a Night's Queen symbol, was taken by the others. And Cersei is also carved of ice, his other wife. Because Lyanna is the one he was betrothed to, got married to Cersei. She is also an Ice Queen.
Yep.
So I think we can skip this because we pretty much summarized this.
We did, yeah. Yep.
Okay. We've got them here to go back to. Let's see which one of these. We have summarized some of these quotes, but some of these we definitely want to read. So go ahead and read this Bloodraven's Cave bit here.
Yeah. One was full of singers, enthroned like Brynden in nests of weirwood roots that wove under and through and around their bodies. Most of them looked dead to him, but as he crossed in front of them, their eyes would open and follow the light of his torch. And that's rather interesting language because it paints these children of the forest sitting in weirwood thrones, and they can't move, but they're watching from the walls, which is the exact same language we have with the Stone Kings of Winter, who, when the living pass by, they seem to be watching from their thrones. And knowing the Starks were green seers, I think this all plays into the idea of enthroned people still being alive on their thrones and watching from the walls. And then when we go see Bloodraven in his cavern, we get more of the same language. We find, seated on his throne of roots in the great cavern, half corpse and half tree, Lord Brynden seemed less a man than some ghastly statue, made of twisted wood, old bone, and rotted wool. The only thing that looked alive in the pale ruin that his face was his one red eye, burning like the last coal in a dead fire, surrounded by twisted roots and tatters of leathery white skin hanging off a yellowed skull. So once again, we have this living being sitting in this weirwood throne, and he's described as a ghastly statue. And we have that one red eye burning again, which we've seen with the Titan of Braavos. He has one burning eye. He's a stone man, green sea. It's just more of that repeating symbolism.
Pause right here. One red eye burning like the last coal in a dead fire, surrounded by twisted roots. Okay. Beric Dondarrion, one burning eye. He was surrounded by twisted roots. He's got a flaming sword, clearly an Azor high figure. Now listen to Melisandre. It is night in your 7 kingdoms now, the Red Woman went on, but soon the sun will rise again. The war continues, Davos Seaworth, and soon some will learn that even an ember in the ashes can still ignite a great blaze. An ember, meaning the last coal of a dying fire, in the ashes, in the ash tree Yggdrasil, Weirddrasil, or whatever you want to say. It's the same idea. So that ember, that's that dead fire. We've seen it a bunch of times. John and Corn half hand to make the campfire, and they take the old dead branches, and then they said they had been dead a long time, but they roared to life in the fire or something like that, and looked like fiery dancers and all this stuff. So there's a fire in the wood that's waiting to come back, and that is honestly, that's Azor Ahai. That's what we're talking about. We're going to spark a great blaze. It's going to be the light that brings the dawn.
And it comes back to the Starks as well, being sort of a fiery representative in a grey waste, almost like they are the last ember in a northern cold. They're a bastion of heat in the cold. That last fire that could, change things. There's volcanic activity to like heated springs and the glass gardens, and we've got all this warmth right in the middle of the cold. So it's that last coal, that last ember that could reignite a massive flame. It's the same sort of stuff.
Mike Boy is talking about all this means that Lyanna is the wall. Well, kind of. The wall is a parallel to the ice moon, or the idea of an ice moon. Night's Queen is an ice moon woman. Lyanna is a moon woman as well. So there's a synergy there. And the others, as Michael talks about, the others are kind of like almost implied as like pieces of the wall. And there's the 79 sentinels in the wall, which might be models for like the creation of the others. You guys remember how that went. But yeah. So this is really strong stuff with Bloodraven here in the cave. It just shows you like the human presence in the weirwood net goes back to Azor Ahai. There are old spirits in the weirwood net, and some of them might need to come roaring to life, might need to be reborn. So Hodor plunged ahead, hurrying after the child and her torch, the one that looks like Arya, deeper into the earth. They passed another branching and another. So the root, again, the cave system are like the branches. Then came into an echoing cavern as large as the great hall of Winterfell, with stone teeth hanging from its ceiling and more poking up through its floor. So what was Winterfell originally? Was it a Child of the Forest cavern? I think it was.
It seems heavily suggested, yeah.
Seems like it's suggested here.
And the stone teeth of the cave as well almost present like a giant stone being down there as well. It's like symbolic language of this giant stone being.
Well, it's more dragons beneath Winterfell, kind of. And the Naga's Hall is, a slain dragon and this and that. So, and ultimately the dragon, I thought about this, the slain dragon kind of is the weirwood net. Like.
Yeah. Yep. It's the weirwoods are very fiery related. Definitely, and they're always dragons.
Consuming and eating things. The people are being fed to it. The Ironborn tales, the way they fear Ygg the demon tree, it's like the way that the townspeople fear the dragon. Kind of, it's like, and then the heroes slew the demon tree. Thank God.
Yeah,
turned it into a boat.
True.
Much safer.
Yeah,
a boat or a hall. Which was it? Oh, we slayed the demon tree Ygg and made that a boat, or Naga the sea dragon and made it a hall, which is a boat. Video forthcoming, by the way. I do have my official Naga's Ribs produced video has been written and scripted and not recorded, but it is coming.
Very nice.
Okay. Did I mention White Walker Iceberg 2 is coming tomorrow morning? Fresh. You guys better click on it. It's coming early.
Check it out.
I don't care if you do have to go to work on Monday morning. I've got a 3-hour White Walker Iceberg, and I demand your attention. Your boss won't notice. Just put like one earbud in. Anyway, all right. I'm glad I promoted your channel earlier. Got that out of the way.
Thanks, man.
Subscribe to Eldric Stoneskin if you didn't earlier, because, come on. Come on. Okay, so the roots were everywhere, twisting through the earth and stone, closing off some passages and holding up the roofs of others. All the color is gone, Bran realized suddenly. The world was black soil and white wood. So there's your house of black and white. She lifted her torch higher, and the light seemed to shift and change. One moment, the flames burned orange and yellow, filling the cavern with a ruddy glow. Then all the colors faded, leaving only black and white.
Yeah, so it's very clearly connecting the House of Black and White to this weirwood cave.
Let's
Clearly.
skip the Nightfort and go to the House of Black and White and come back to the Nightfort, since it's just right there. At the top, she found a set of carved weirwood doors 12 feet high, 12 like the last hero. The left-hand door was made of weirwood, as pale left-hand path, shout out. Pale as bone, the right of gleaming ebony. In their center was a carved moon face, ebony on the weirwood side, weirwood on the ebony. The look of it reminded her somewhat of the heart tree in the God's Wood of Winterfell, just in case we weren't like comparing the weirwood faces already. The doors are watching me, she thought. Statues of them stood along the walls, massive and threatening. Around their feet, these are the gods. Red candles flickered, as dim as distant stars. Shout out Titan of Braavos. The nearest was a marble woman 12 feet tall. Real tears were trickling from her eyes to fill the bowl she cradled in her arms. Farther on, she could make out, she's cradling a bowl of sorrow. It's like, I want to be cradling my baby, but it was taken. So instead I have a bowl of sorrow. Shout out The Sorrows at the Bridge of Dream. The nearest was, what's that?
Oh, not that. Oh, I agree. Yeah, the sorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just cooking here.
Yeah.
The nearest was a marble. Okay, read that. No, uncook. Repeating yourself. Farther on, she could make out a great stone face, a pale infant with a sword. Oh, that's right, the pale child of Bacalon. And that's from a different Martin short story. So there's more to know about the child of Bacalon if you read it. I'm not sure, but it sounds like an abomination. Anyway, I guess that's the last hero's baby or something, right? An infant with a sword.
Being pale as well, it's like the stolen other baby potentially. Yeah.
Makes me think of the young weirwood tree at the Nightfort too. It's young. It's like a sapling. And it's kind of a parallel to Bran. So
I think I included this quote only because I sort of wanted to draw a connection between stone magic itself and the children of the forest. It's interesting that the representation of the old gods within the House of Black and White, it's not a wooden face, it's a great stone face, because we have wooden doors and we have wooden chairs with faces, but why is this a stone face? We see stone faces in the, obviously beneath the Winterfell crypts, but we also see stone faces in Ariane's Winds of Winter preview chapter beneath the Rainwood. We see stone faces staring out from beneath in the caverns there, and there's also a black pool in that cavern as well.
Okay. So let's talk about those caverns real quick, because that could have been a whole another parallel location that we didn't put in here. What do you think those stone faces are? I originally thought this means that the children of the forest can carve faces into stone and use them to see in the same way they can do with trees. But they could also be... I originally thought they can't be petrified weirwoods because they're underground. But then at the Nightfort, we do see a weirwood face underground. So are these stalagmites that have grown together? There's a word for it, and I forget. Somebody, the geologist in the chat, will let me know. But when they grow together and form a column, there's a word for that. It does happen. And it appears that the stone faces are carved on these columns and also in the wall of the cavern. So the wall is definitely not a petrified tree. So it seems like we are carving faces in stone. What do you make of it?
I wonder whether the ability... So it seems like one of the big themes of A Song of Ice and Fire, as a wise man once said, was the ability to separate the body from the mind. And you can split it. So I wonder if there's potential, if you can carve a face in anything, if it has a face, maybe the spirit can slip into something with a face. So carve the tree with a face, you can then go into the face and look through those eyes. I'm wondering if you can do the same with stone, because we hear the children of the forest have their gods are gods of forest, stream, and stone. So we know their gods are the old gods, which are the spirits that reside in the weirwoods. So by saying they have gods of forest and gods of stone, it almost implies that there are spirits within stones that they worship. They have gods of stone. So I wonder if this is containing spirits in the same way the trees can contain spirits. Because, I mean, the trees turn to stone as well. So and that allows whatever the spirit is within them to be eternal. You know, if you could store your spirit in a tree, eventually the tree, if it's not a weirwood, would die. But if you can store your spirit within stone, then you could be eternal. You know,
I wonder what the criteria would be. Like, just any old stone. Are the stalactites and stalagmites special because they accrete gradually over thousands of years, and so there's some sort of timeless essence to them because of that? They're growing like a tree. Does that make them unique? Is it just a magic spell that you do when you carve? Is it the location? Is there weirwood trees above? There are weirwood trees in the Rainwood, so that could be.
Yeah, and it's. I'm not sure what to make of the stone itself. It's
you just stalled out there. You're like, yeah.
I'm thinking. Well, I mean, it draws parallels to the Stone Kings of Winter. Is basically what I'm saying. Is if a spirit can go into the stone, then if you have a stone man, the spirit could slip into that stone being. You know,
my chat is losing it. They're just making up fictional names for when the stalactites and stalagmites grow together. Stalag friends. Guys, there is a real word for it, and I don't think it sounds like either of those words. It's a totally different word. But that's okay. I like your pretend words better. So, where are we here? Huge and threatening statues. Yeah, I mean, really strongly evocative. Farther on, she could make out a great stone face. Okay, I read that one. In the center of the temple, she found the water she had heard. A pool 10 feet across, black as ink. Very black, and lit by dim red candles, the ones that look like stars. And by the way, the weirwood leaves, their bloody hands, they're 5 pointed hands. So they are kind of like stars too. And the mountain ash has red berries with star shapes on them. The mountain ash being used as another weirwood analog. So I do think there's also the scene with Cold Hands when the ravens are stirring in the weirwood tree. The starlight stirs with the leaves and the branches together. And there's stuff about like seeing through the trees. Like, yeah, there's anyway. So that's cool. The dim red candles, basically, I'm saying those are like weirwood leaves here, kind of. They prayed at dawn before they broke their fast, kneeling around the still black pool. That sounds like Eddard, kneeling by the black pool is probably why you shared that here.
And he's praying.
Go ahead.
It was more to draw the link between. We see 4 black pools within the series. We got one at Winterfell, which is weirwood associated. We got one in the House of Black and White, which we're discussing, weirwood associated. We got one beneath the cavern, beneath the Rainwood, as we just discussed. And then we have one. Which one have I missed? The Black River beneath Bloodraven's cave. We have black water beneath there as well, and all of them seem to be weirwood associated black pools of water. And the interesting thing was that
Eldric, what's the name of the river that flows from the God's Eye? The Blackwater Rush.
Oh, the Black Water. Yeah. Oh man, it just keeps coming. But and the praying at dawn. This is the Faceless Men and Arya. She prays. She kneels before the black pool to pray to the many-faced God, and that's exactly what we see Ned doing, praying before his black pool to pray to the old gods who have many faces.
Oh God, it's worse. It's worse. The Blackwater Rush flows to the Blackwater Bay, and a bay is a type of horse. So it's a water horse. It's a black seahorse, just like all of Dany's seahorse symbolism. She's got her seahorse is as gray as a winter sea, actually, just like Grey King's beard. And remember, the horse is all just weirwood. It's Yggdrasil. It's tree horse stuff.
That Blackwater Bay is where we find that green monster, the jade monster, rise up.
That sure is.
Just keeps coming.
Are you not entertained? All right, this is what we do here. So I mean, in the sense that like this is a layer of A Song of Ice and Fire that is here to be enjoyed, and we like enjoying it. So yeah, that's why I say if you like my channel, you'll definitely like Eldric's channel. I think that's been demonstrated by now. We're doing the same type of stuff. Same thing with Crowfood's daughter and Michael Talks. Absolutely. And There's probably a couple others, but yeah, let's see here. Tim, obviously, Greyways Tim. Let's see. When you are not pouring, you must stand as still as if you have been carved of stone. The kindly man told her, "Can you do that?" Arya heard much and more that night, but almost all of it was in the tongue of braavos, and she hardly understood one word in 10. Still as stone, she told herself. The hardest part was struggling not to yawn. Before the night was done, her wits were wandering. Oh, she's dreaming. Turning into a statue and dreaming, Eldric. Standing there with the flagon in her hands, like a statue, she dreamed she was a wolf, running free through a moonlit forest with a great pack howling at her heels. So she's turning into a moon singer.
Yep. And she's, standing there still as stone, this stark, becoming statue-like and dreaming as green seers do, and controlling her wolf sort of from the outside. It's,
And so, and then remember I said the wolf is synonymous with the warriors here, like the Night's Watch warriors, the Kings of Winter. They're like wolves. They are wolves. The Shadow Wolf it's the same archetype here. So over to the Temple of the Moon Singers. When she looked behind her, the harbor and lagoon were lost to sight. Ahead, a row of mighty statues stood along both sides of the channel. Solemn stone men in long bronze robes, which the bronze robes, of course, turn green. So you should read that as green. Spattered with the droppings of the seabirds. Some held books, some daggers, some hammers. One clutched a golden star in his upraised hand. Another was upending a stone flagon to send an endless stream of water splashing down into the canal. Endless. So the endless sea, bottomless water, same symbol. Are they gods? Asked Arya. The Sea Lords. They're the lords of the Green Sea. So who are the ancient kings of winter? They're lords of the Green Sea. They're green seers. They're men who tapped into the godhood by becoming no one. Sea Lords, said Yorko. The Isle of the Gods is farther on. See, 6 bridges down on the right bank. That is the Temple of the Moon Singers. So the Isle of the Gods, that's where all the gods are. Like we already talked about this. Temple of the Moon Singers. It was one that Arya had spied from the lagoon. A mighty mass of snow-white marble topped with a huge silver dome, obviously meant to symbolize the moon, whose milk glass windows, shout out to Dawn, showed all the phases of the moon. A pair of marble maidens flanked its gates, tall as sea lords. So they are like kings of winter and gods too. Think of Lyanna, statue down with the kings of winter. They're supporting a crescent-shaped lintel. Those are the moon singers. This is the Temple of the Moon Singers. So we just said Arya turning into a statue becomes a wolf and sings to the moon. So dead parallel. And I just put that together with Arya and this. That's very tight.
Even the Sea Lords are described as solemn. They're being solemn, which is that's a very stark-like description, being solemn.
Indeed it is. Yeah, the whole Blackwater burned with green wildfire, and Shaggy Dog, the black direwolf, with burning green eyes. Exactly, Argon. Like we said, Shaggy Dog is the green monster. He symbolizes the Night's Watch with the green fire and the black, and leaping out of the crypts, just like the Kings of Winter will rise out of the crypts. And Jon, as a King of Winter, will be reborn from the crypts, at least magically, if not directly. So when I say not directly, it's possible Jon will be stolen by the others all the way into Winterfell, and that he won't be freed and returned to his body until Winterfell. In fact, I think that's a good possibility. That Jon will lead the invasion all the way through the wall down to Winterfell, and it won't be then. Because he was going to lead an attack on Winterfell when he died. That's what he was going to do.
Very true, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Let's see here. The empty eye holes of the skins upon the wall seemed to follow her. For a moment, she could almost see their lips moving, whispering dark, sweet secrets. We already talked about that. That's the quote. More still as stone. Okay, read that. The second body was that of an old woman. She had gone to sleep upon a dreaming couch in one of the hidden alcoves where special candles conjured visions of things loved and lost. So yeah, dreaming couches, weirwood thrones. There's the woman again. Yeah.
Almost screams glass candles too. Giving candles, giving special visions as well.
Oh, and I mentioned that George took the idea of an obsidian candle that gives you visions from Mesoamerican shamanistic practice, where they used obsidian scrying mirrors. And so all these black water ponds are mirrors. And they are scrying mirrors with the weirwood looking at the reflection in the pond and people going into it and out and it representing the weirwood astral realm.
That's really good. Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me about that one. This is teamwork, man. This is the
It
lore
is,
side.
man.
So the Titan of Braavos, we'll go through these quick because we summarized these already, but here's the words. Old Nan, so one of Old Nan's stories, which are about the North and the Starks usually, but here's the Titan of Braavos. He was a giant as tall as a mountain. Think of Gregor Clegane, the giant, the mountain that rides, who's like a stone giant. And whenever Braavos stood in danger, he would wake with fire in his eyes. And separately, Arya sees. His eyes look like stars because they've got literal bonfires in the statue. His rocky limbs grinding and groaning as he waded out into the sea to smash the enemies. One hand rested atop the ridge to his left, bronze fingers coiled about a knob of stone, sort of like Rickard's hands coiled around the pommel of the sword. The other thrust up into the air, clasping the hilt of a broken sword. Here the last Titan yet stands astride the stony shoulders of his brothers. Is that from a song?
It is. I think it's from the Winds preview chapter, and I think it's the interesting part of that was him being referenced as the last Titan, sort of reminiscent of the last hero.
The giants. Oh, I was thinking of the last of the giants. Oh, I'm the last of the giants, but also the last hero. Yeah,
probably that too. Actually, yeah. And
last Titan literally means last hero, though. Pretty much, though, it's the same thing. Yeah,
in a way. And then to go on to say, he's standing astride the stony shoulders of his brothers, the last hero forming the Night's Watch, and their brothers. So we've got the last Titan, the last hero, standing with his stony brothers. Yeah, it just keeps coming.
Dude. Stony brothers, man. It sounds like we're having the Black Panthers over for like a hippie Black Panther unification meeting, smokehouse session or something. Those really did happen. All right, so the deck's tilted, creaking, as the Galeas, Titan's daughter, is it Gallius?
Or
is it just Galley, and it's spelled weird?
Yeah, Galley-like, I guess, yeah.
Somebody that knows Spanish words for ships, tell me how that's pronounced. Titan's daughter, we already talked about it, heeled to starboard and began to come about.
Yeah, it was more to highlight the fact that the ship Arya's on is the Titan's daughter. Okay, I think that's a pretty heavy,
They're above the open water. The Titan towered with his eyes blazing and his long green hair blowing in the wind. I mean, Garth the Green said to have green hair, so
that's that burning green man, King of Winter reference.
That's it.
That you raised, yeah.
And that's why you get back to, at some point, you're kind of like, I think Azor ahai might have been a green man himself. Like, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
In part. Some kind of horned god,
Yeah.
Because the emperors of the Great Empire of the Dawn were probably marrying the goddesses of Lang, who have Old One's blood. And they were coming to Westeros to interbreed with the children of the forest, potentially Nissa, child of the forest, wife of Azor ahai, might have been the Amethyst Empress. So, Azor ahai seems to have elf blood.
Yeah,
just like Elric of Melniboné is half elven. Anyway, or at least the Melnibonéans, the founding population. My Elric lores, I usually get corrected. It's only approximate, anyways. Above the open water, the Titan towered. Okay, I read that. Baelor the Blessed would not reach his knee, and Baelor the Blessed is an ice marble statue outside the ice temple of the Sept of Baelor, so comparable. The Titan could step right over the walls of Winterfell. Then the Titan gave a mighty roar. So this is, again, Robin Aaron with the giant, tromp, I'm a giant, roaring, stepping over the walls, then getting killed.
It's interesting that he says that he could step right over the walls, and then the next line is, it's almost as if he wakes up, he gives a mighty roar,
It's like, what, walls of Winterfell?
Yeah, okay.
Later in the day, the canal would be choked with serpent boats and barges. Oh, that sounds like the weirwood roots that choke the caverns, which is what the canals represent. But in the pre-dawn darkness, they had the waterway almost to themselves. Brusco liked to reach the fish market just as the Titan roared to herald the coming of the sun. Like I said, it's specific Morning Star stuff there. The sound would boom across the lagoon, faint with distance, but still loud enough to wake the sleeping city. The horn that wakes the sleepers. Come on down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heavy.
I think his roar is even described as thunderous at some points as well.
It would be.
Didn't grab that, but yeah.
Oh, and I will, let me go back and check some PayPals. Sorry, guys. I love you. I appreciate it. It's just, we were cooking. Kelly Johnson, what magic will activate the crypt statues to fight against the others? I mean, that's the meta question that we're talking about, Kelly. That's like this whole stream is an answer to that question. It seems to be green seer magic that does it. We're just trying to figure out what the waking amounts to. That's what I
personally think that it's Bran. I think that there's stone puppets beneath there that are ready to be used by someone that's taught. And he's gone there to learn how, like, the secrets beneath the earth. He's gone to learn the secrets of the green seers, things forgotten now in Winterfell. So I think that's what Bran's ultimate purpose is to learn green seeing magic to be able to potentially use these grey men, and they rise up and fight on his behalf. And that could explain why we see a King Bran. If he rises up and has this stone army, no one's going to challenge him. He'll be king. He'll take over Westeros because he's got this army at his hands that he's controlling. Almost like a Varamir 6 skins, but like a Brandon 12 skins or something like that. I think you're on mute, dude.
I was just saying, well, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Who opened Bloodraven's
That's
third
what I'm
eye?
aiming towards.
Oh, sorry, what?
I'm not completely sold on that. I'm still, I'm open to different ideas and stuff, but that's what I'm thinking wakes these stone people, I think. But
I wonder if what if the spirits of the dead Starks can inhabit the wolves? What about the wolf pack that Arya and Bran are going to lead? Like, maybe that'll be their avatars.
True. Yeah. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Both of them do it. Yeah.
That could be interesting. And maybe that's because the wolves do have a psychic network of their own. They can communicate and see each other. So the dire wolves are magical animals. Maybe because think about it, the wolves are in stone too down in the crypts. I mean, maybe that's just because they're all skin changers or whatever, but like maybe the wolves are part of the preservation of the Stark spirits that are happening.
Yeah. Well, even when you think about ghosts looking like a weirwood and that spirit being able to go into the weirwood, into the direwolf, live that second life, the second life of a king, it's definitely suggesting that. Yeah.
Well, let's come back to that. That's kind of a new idea that we just were thinking about. We hadn't really talked about the wolves yet. Who opened Bloodraven's third eye? That's a huge mystery. I mean, if you ask Grey Area, she would say Daemon. But I've no idea, really. I mean, it could have been Leaf. Could have been the ghost of Highheart. Could have been the previous. In fact, actually, I do think it was the ghost of Highheart or Leaf. I think that happened before Bloodraven went north to join the Watch. I think he had his gifts awakened in some cave somewhere. Maybe it was Barrack's cave. Maybe that's Bloodraven's old nest, in fact. But I would suspect it has to do with the High Heart and the Ghost of High Heart and or Leaf. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. Only wolves who have reached an age where they have to find a new pack. Well, that's the whole thing. Is a lone wolf dies. There's no such thing because it dies if it happens. If it loses its pack, it won't live. Found your channel last week. Been binging all your content. Thank you for your amazing work. Well, hopefully you've been able to follow the stream, Silent Josh. I don't know how much you binged, but welcome to the heart of the matter. And thank you, Crimson Templar. We should start back. Yeah, it's about that time, isn't it? Just a show of support for excellent content and creators both. Thank you for everything you do. You're quite welcome. This is what we love. And I'm very grateful to be able to do this for a job, which is something I should probably say more. I hope it comes across in my enthusiasm. I'm very happy to do this and not sit in a cubicle. Needless to say. Or be doing sales, which is kind of what I used to do. So, we've got some Grey King quotes. We can just really summarize these here. Oh, the thing that this reminded me of is to mention bones. Bones are kind of like stone and kind of like trees. The trees are bone white. The bones remember, just like the North remembers and the trees obviously remember. And the purpose of these statues might be to preserve some sort of intelligence or awareness. The bones remember. And this is a literal principle. The ice wights move until you break their bones, and then they remember that they're dead and they stop moving. And then there's this stuff here with Aeron Damphair, where he's feeling the god in his bones and knowing the truth from his bones, and Naga's bones are telling him the truth, and they can feel the magic of the bones, but Naga's bones are actually petrified weirwood stone. So you see stone, bones, and weirwood. It's like kind of similar. The others also bone white. So on the crown of the hill, 40 monstrous stone ribs rose from the earth like the trunks of great pale trees. So Naga's ribs themselves are a weirwood crown that the hill is wearing. And the hill is like the earth, the green man, you know. Or if the Grey King is under the hill in the cave, then the hill is kind of like his head. And the ribs are his crown, and he's under there. So
we see that same language with the circle of weirwoods beyond the wall as well. That's described as a crown as well. A nine weirwoods. So it's almost like the King of Winter's crown.
Right, and I've compared those many times. Yeah, the King of Winter's crown of 9 black swords and the 9 weirwood grove. I do think it's intentionally paralleled.
Yep. And in that scene, we actually see one, and he wakes, and it's described as him as if a boulder had come to life. So a stone giant waking at this,
right in the middle of the grove, and they wake when the Night's Watch show up. So again, like people have to show up and wake the stones and things.
Yep. And it's a child's cry that wakes him too. Now I think about it.
Correct. It is. And it's
So children waking giants. Yeah, children and giants.
It's a good one. That's a good one. Let's see here. The sight made Aeron's heart beat faster. Naga had been the first sea dragon. The Great King had slain her, and the drowned god had changed her bones to stone. Naga's ribs became the beams and pillars of his long hall, just as her jaws became his throne. For 1,000 years and 7 he reigned here, took his mermaid wife, ruled both stone and salt, wearing robes of... So stone means the land, and salt the sea. Tall, pale crown made from Naga's teeth, weirwood crown again. That was in the dawn of days. Let's see. They were seated on thrones carved from mother of pearl. I just thought that was interesting because a lot of pearl used with the Starks. Carved thrones, white weirwood thrones, driftwood thrones. There's a carved driftwood throne that old man Drum is not Drum. Who is it? The really old guy that comes to the King's Moot.
Yeah, he's on a litter, isn't he? He's carried on a litter.
The carved driftwood throne. They say chair, but it's a carved driftwood chair carried on a litter.
I forget his name.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, but yes.
Let's see here. So there's the pale throne is the point. And then men were smaller now, their lives had grown short. And then here's the Bones quote. Bones, he thought, the bones of the soul, Balin's bones and Uri's. The truth is in our bones, for flesh decays and bone endures, and on the hill of Naga, the bones of the Grey King's hall. He had found the answer in his bones. The way was plain before him. The night was so cold his body seemed to steam as he walked back towards the shelter, but there was a fire burning in his heart. A sleep came easily for once.
Fiery heart. Bones are also a big deal with the Starks as well. We see that push to get Ned's bones back to the crypts. We've got to get those bones, need to be back there.
Oh, and that's what's all that's going to be left of the Green Seer Kings. The first ones down there. The flesh will all have rotted away, and the bones will petrify with the weirwood roots. So there'll be the stone skeletons in stone, roots. It'll be a Grateful Dead logo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's George.
There it is. Seek the hill of Naga and the bones of the Grey King's hall, for in that holy place when the moon is drowned and come again, we shall make ourselves a worthy king, a godly king. So remember I mentioned the Dothraki womb of the world at Vase Dothrak. It is a black body of water has no bottom. The moon is mirrored on the surface, just like the moon white weirwood is mirrored on the black pond at Winterfell. And just as the bloody dragon sword is dipped into the pond, bloody Dany the dragon dips herself into the pond and comes back out and is reborn, kind of. So, like the moon, she's a moon character as well. So it's all very, very parallel. And here's the further parallel to Naga's Hill, where the moon drowns and comes again. And then we make a godly king, meaning a weir king, a green monster. We shall have no king but from the king's moot. Listen to the waves speaking to us from the sea. Go ahead and read this next one. This is your money quote.
The Grey King ruled the sea itself and took a mermaid to wife so his sons and daughters might live above the waves or beneath them as they chose. His hair and beard and eyes were as grey as a winter sea, and from these he took his name. The crown he wore was made of driftwood, so all who knelt before him might know that his kingship came from the sea and the drowned god who dwells beneath it. The deeds attributed to the Grey King by the priests and singers of the Iron Islands are many and marvellous. It was the Grey King who brought fire to the earth by taunting the storm god until he lashed down with a thunderbolt, setting a tree ablaze. I probably might just stop there and go through a few parallels we have with the Starks and with Winterfell. I think we talked about Ned taking the mermaid wife and Bran being able to choose to go beneath the sea or not.
Oh, Bran himself is a mermaid. He can't move his legs. And he's half fish, so
yeah, more.
That's Ravenous Reader. Shout out.
And the storm, the Grey King taunting the storm god until he lashed down with a thunderbolt, setting a tree ablaze. That's pretty interesting language. When we look to Winterfell, it's described as a giant stone tree, and we've seen that giant stone tree hit by lightning in the past, and that sort of connects through to the little boy who was hit by lightning, and then he fell from the tower, and it woke his green-seeing gift.
And Bran falling from the tower, obtaining the fire of the gods. Yes.
Yep. So, and
just
setting
like
the tree
statue fell.
Yeah. And that tree being set ablaze, the weirwoods are constantly described as being a blaze of flame amongst a sea of green. It's very interesting language. It's that fire of the gods that Dave's always saying as well. It's very much that, and it seems as though Bran falling from that tower, being struck by lightning, has given him the ability to have that fire of the gods, that power of the gods. He climbed high to get it to reach for the. Yeah.
The lightning is super important. Beric is a lightning lord, and his sword breaks in his fight. Waymar's broken sword is like a tree struck by lightning. So.
Yep.
We could go sideways with the lightning, but that's kind of like the symbol of the other's fire of the gods, is how I interpret it mostly.
Mm-hmm.
It, like the meteors, it is a thing that transfers the fire of the heavens down to earth and starts fires. Like that's the parallel.
Yep.
So,
where was I? The Grey King also taught men how to weave nets and sails and carve the first longship from the hard, pale wood of Ig, a demon tree who fed on human flesh. The Grey King's greatest feat, however, was the slaying of Naga, the largest of the sea dragons, a beast so colossal that she was said to feed on leviathans and great krakens and drown whole islands in her wrath. The Grey King built a mighty long hall about her bones, using her ribs as beams and rafters. From there he ruled the Iron Islands for 1,000 years, until his skin had turned as grey as his hair and beard. Only then did he cast aside his driftwood crown and walk into the sea, descending to the drowned god's watery halls to take his rightful place at his right hand. So this is really interesting stuff here. We hear that the Grey King had grey eyes and grey beard beforehand, but we hear that once he had ruled for 1,000 years, it was then that his skin had turned as grey as his hair and beard. And then once his skin had turned grey, he cast aside his crown and walked into the sea, almost as if he went into the green sea, and descended to the drowned god's watery halls. And like I suggested earlier, the Starks have watery halls, and we find them going, once they die, turning grey or becoming statues and sitting beneath those watery halls and taking their rightful place. That's their place. That's where they're supposed to be. So it's more language of that same stuff, turning grey, walking into the sea and descending down beneath the halls to sit a throne at his right hand. Once again, there's that hand, that grey hand.
And just like Robert saying to Ned, yeah, come help me rule, be at my side, be my hand.
Yeah.
So the main thing is that the literal truth of the Grey King seems to be that he was a guy on a weirwood throne that petrified. Okay. At some point, he probably didn't walk into the sea. He was probably never seen again because he was down in the cave. And at some point, you get hooked up and you can't leave anymore. So he was never seen again. For a time, he did rule, vicariously through his hands and minions and instruments or whatever. But eventually, he turned into a statue. And what does turning into a statue equate to? It equates to joining the Godhead, going down into the Green Sea and joining with the gods. So,
and it's almost as if the Grey King or the drowned god have their own stony court, like the Shrouded Lord does down there. They're all seated at tables. They're sitting at a great star table and eating. There's that feast, that Valhalla sort of stuff.
Definitely a stony court.
And the fact that they developed...
Come on now. Oh, sorry.
The fact that the Grey King's culture and also developed a resurrection ritual where they're blessed with stone, I sort of connected those two dots. And, he turned grey and then went beneath the earth. And we have this idea of being blessed with stone and rising harder and stronger as well. So I wonder if they're tied and that's what it is. Maybe he was blessed with stone to preserve the body so he could rise again harder and stronger.
I just want to say that we have 515 people still watching, which means that 35 people who were watching earlier are cowards and bailed out. Shame on you. No, thanks everybody for still watching, and we feel again privileged to be entertaining on you. I just wanted to figure. I can't believe it's actually 25 people. Yeah, I know some people are like up at 3 a.m. and need to go to sleep because they're at another. I know. We do appreciate you. All right. So the other ones, let's real quickly mention the drowned men. They're super obvious white parallels because what is dead can never die, but rises again harder and stronger. So it emphasizes the stony-like nature of the wights, how they're hard. Okay, so check this out. The famous one, these others are my drowned men, God's servants, just as I am. I have no secrets from them, nor from our God, beside whose holy see I stand. The holy see, there's a reference to the Catholic holy see. So it's just further, the green sea is holy, it's where the gods live. And the drowned men, they're like the ice wights, which again, they're like the others, both of them being statue-like. Because the others and the wights are both hive minds. They are both people who've become no one. And they both have been wronged potentially and they're upset about it. So they're kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
The drowned men took up their driftwood cudgels and began to beat them one against the other as they walked back down the hill. Others joined them. So again, other like drowned men. The clangor spread along the strand, such a fearful clacking, all this dead wood and clattering as if 100 trees were pummeling one another with their limbs. So there's the battle of the tree warriors. There's a little Irish folklore shout out there, I believe, too. But and then with the black water symbol, that's all from Euron. There's a house black tide. Baelor Black Tide has a black sable cloak. Euron drowns him and steals it. And then Euron is associated with these tides of darkness, a black wine sea. His sailcloth is black. Everything is black. He's got a black eye patch. It's endless. So the Black Sea is present there too. It just all comes from Euron.
Good point.
And he's a dark Azor high figure who's the god rising from the graves and charnel pits when the red star comes by. You know what I mean? Like, right.
And he has protective armor that's scaled as well. He's got that scaled armor.
Yeah. Yeah. The Valerians, which ties into the dragon scale armor beneath the Targaryen King's Landing. Yep. We got it.
Nailing it
Shrouded
down.
Lord. Let's see here. Yeah, we got to read this. Go ahead. Take it away.
We are made of blood and bone in the image of the father and the mother, said Septim Lemore. Make no vain glorious boasts, I beg you. Pride is a grievous sin. The stone men were proud as well, and the Shrouded Lord was the proudest of them all. The heat of the glowing coals brought a flush to Tyrion's face. Is there a shrouded lord, or is he just some tale? The shrouded lord has ruled these mists since Garen's day, said Yandri. Some say that he himself is Garen, risen from his watery grave. The dead do not rise, insisted Halden Halfmaester, and no man lives 1,000 years. Yes, there is a shrouded lord. There have been a score of them.
Hold on, just pause right there. The dead do not rise, and no man lives 1,000 years. So
Same Grey King.
Grey King living 1,000 years, and the drowned men rising again, harder and stronger. Keep going. It's great.
Yeah, yep. There've been a score of them. When one dies, another takes his place. This one is a corsair from the Basilisk Isles who believed the Royne would offer richer pickings than the summer sea. Aye, I've heard that too, said Duck. But there's another tale I like better. The one that says he's not like the other stone men, that he started as a statue till a grey woman came out of the fog and kissed him with lips as cold as ice. So we have statues being brought back to life with a kiss, and that brings back to the Grey Kings being blessed with stone and being kissed back to life and rising harder and stronger, living for 1,000 years, rising from watery graves, stony courts of the Grey King. You can see all these connections, these webs, and there's a lot there. And I think that grey woman with lips as cold as ice goes back to this, potentially back to this crying stone woman. They all seem to have this icy sort of connections, and yeah.
And shout out again to Disputed Lands. Crowfood's daughter's done really good stuff with Grey King and Mermaid and this pattern of the kiss that resurrects people. And you can see below here, Shrouded Lord is referred to as his Grey Grace. Grace is the title for a king. So that's literally calling him a Grey King there.
Yeah, yep, yeah. That's right.
And the mermaid, like mermaids, in a lot of the mermaid stories, they kiss people to life. And so we've got this woman coming out of the fog and kissing the statue to life. Like, he may have started out as a statue because he was like, that wasn't his starting point. But like, it's the starting point of his current cycle. So how did he become a statue? Well, he's dead or frozen or in the tree. And then this woman comes along and helps him get reborn. That's actually more like the pattern that we've been seeing.
Yeah. So. And the idea that no man lives for 1,000 years, they just sort of, when one dies, another takes his place, is almost like this idea of this body changing, maybe even like that, becoming no one and taking that person's body and then becoming them.
Right. By the time you live 1,000 years, you're no man, you're no one. You're like,
yeah, you're the hero with 1,000 faces almost. You know.
Shout out to the YouTube channel, Hero with 1,000 Voices, aka Sean. So this time Duck laughed, and Halden said, "What a droll little fellow you are, YOLO. They say that the Shrouded Lord will grant a boon to any man who can make him laugh. Perhaps his Grey Gaze will choose you to ornament his stony court." We've basically paraphrased that one. Duck glanced at his companion uneasily. "It's not good to jape of that one, not when we're so near the Royne. He hears." "Wisdom from a duck," said Halden. "I beg your pardon, YOLO. You need not look so pale. I was only playing with you. The Prince of Sorrows does not bestow his grey kiss lightly." So, the sorrows. I mentioned the sorrows, you know. Mm-hmm. At Coriane, the cage was hung from the wall so the prince might witness the enslavement of the women and children whose fathers and brothers had died in his hopeless war. But the prince, it is said, called down a curse on the conquerors, entreating Mother Royne to avenge her children. And so that very night, the Royne flooded out of season, and with greater force than was known in living memory, a thick fog full of evil humors fell, and the Valyrian conquerors began to die of Greyscale. And then there's some quote about them who were the lords of fire. You know, now their cold breath comes up from beneath the water.
Yeah, much like we see that cold breath coming from the crypts rising up.
Greywaist Tim, shout out for still being in the stream. Appreciate you, buddy. Hey, do you have a Patreon, Tim? I was trying to figure that out. On Patreon, they've got a new thing where you can recommend other people for Patreon. And you don't have one, do you, Eldric?
Nah, I don't, man. Nah.
Okay.
No.
Tim, did you start a Patreon? I thought that you did, but I couldn't find you on Patreon. Anyway, if you do, let me know, and I'll recommend you. All right, let's see here. Oh, yes. The actual Bridge of Dream. Go ahead and read this first paragraph.
Ahead of them, the bridge grew larger. The Bridge of Dream, Griff called it, but this dream was smashed and broken. Pale stone archers marched off into the fog, reaching from the Palace of Sorrow to the river's western bank. Half of them had collapsed, pulled down by the weight of the grey moss that draped them and the thick black vines that snaked upward from the water. The broad wooden span of the bridge had rotted through, but some of the lamps that lined the way were still aglow. As the shy maid drew closer, Tyrion could see the shapes of stone men moving in the light, shuffling aimlessly around the lamps like slow grey moths. Some were naked, others clad in shrouds.
So there's all death language there. The shrouds, others, gray moths, death's head moths. That's all. They're dead men. So they're wights and stone men. It's all the same thing. And then we have the gray moss that draped the pillars, pulling them down. Usually moss is compared to beards. Like there's a lot of mossy beards and stuff like that, and the gray beards and green beards. So that's what this makes me think of, is the Grey King's beard. So these are like pillars with beards. They're stone. The pillars themselves are like stone people, just like in the crypts, with the stone pillars marching into the darkness. And it's the same thing here. Pale stone arches marched off into the fog. You see it like
I'm just going to grab another quote, because as we go down the river, we find a lot more of exactly what you're saying. Where are we?
Go ahead and look for it, and I'll read the next bit.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. Duck and Yandri pushed against the poles. Ysilla turned the tiller. Young Griff pushed the shy maid away from a broken tower whose windows stared down like blind black eyes. And then we have the grey moss
the tower
grew thickly.
is like a person.
Yeah, and it's the broken tower, which we find in Winterfell as well. The grey moss grew thickly here, covering the fallen stones in great mounds and bearding all the towers. So it's exactly what you just said is in this chapter again. Yeah.
There it is. And I think that at the Fist of the First Men, they do it too. The stones are bearded there. So I didn't think about that in the context of stone men, but that's what this is about. These are all stone men. You think of the Titan standing on the ranks of his brothers. They're basically saying that the stone cliffs are the Titan's brothers. I think that's what it's talking about. Like he's emerging from the stone. Yeah, so...
It's interesting you bring up the Fist of the First Men too, because that's a big stone man rising up from beneath the earth, punching his way up through from beneath the ground.
And it's a place haunted by the spirits of the first men. So it's like, where you see the stone giants, stone hands, stone statues, there are spirits that are still there. It's a way of trapping spirits, which goes in with the idea of carving faces in the stone in order to use them for magic. So like... If you're not convinced by now that stone can be used for magic, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's maybe not as important as ice and fire magic, but it's definitely in here. So
something in it for sure.
Let's see. Tim does not have a Patreon, but he wants everyone to know that Dagon and Dalton have officially had all their shots now, so no more visits to the vets for a whole year. Fingers crossed. Congratulations, Tim's cats. Once you have mastered your gifts, you may look where you will and see what the trees have seen, be it yesterday or last year or 1,000 ages past. Men live their lives trapped in an eternal present between the mists of memory and the sea of shadow. That is all we know of the days to come. Certain moths live their whole lives in a day, yet to them that little span of time must seem as long as years and decades to us. An oak may live 300 years, a redwood tree 3,000, a weirwood will live forever if left undisturbed. To them, seasons pass in the flutter of a moth's wings, and past, present, and future are as one. What were you wanting to point out here?
So I was just pointing out that Bloodraven, when he's talking, uses moths as a reference point for the passage of time. And then when we read the stone men on the Bridge of Dream, they're compared to like shuffling aimlessly around the lamps like slow grey moths. And the Bridge of Dream is very much a weirwood symbol. We see that it can bypass the river and the laws of time. And we see this moth reference, and I sort of looked into why we're using moths for this. And to me, a moth is a very Azor ahai symbol in the way that moths fly towards the light. They reach for the fire, they reach for the sun, and that's like an Icarus almost. They fly towards the sun. It's a very grasping for power, and I think the power of the weirwoods is what the stone men probably grasped, or something along those lines. There's a deliberate reference for the moths here fluttering, to certain moths, their whole life live their whole lives in a day, yet to them that span of time seemed as long as years or decades. So there's this confusion of time, and stone men being compared to moths. I think it's an Azor Ahai symbol, and suggestive that potentially Azor Ahai was that stone man reaching for the fire as moths reach for light. Yeah.
I think that all tracks. Yeah, the Mothman. Isn't that like a horror movie or something?
Yeah, I think he's like a cryptid, like a what would you call it? Yeah.
Let's see. His time is a river. The root and die in one place. The river does not move them. Yeah, we've talked about that one already.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Fog clung to them, damp and chilly. A sunken temple loomed up out of the grayness. As Yandri and Duck leaned up on their poles, they passed a marble stair that spiraled up from the mud and ended jaggedly in the air. Stairway to heaven, if anyone. Beyond, half seen, were other shapes, shadowed spires, headless statues, trees with roots bigger than their boat.
I think they're all very Winterfell references in that sunken temple being, we've got the crypts beneath the earth. We've got a marble stair, a spiral staircase like we see in the crypts. We have shattered spires like the broken tower, headless statues in the same way that Ned has become headless. I think this statue on the second pass through, because these symbols we see twice. These are the ones we see twice as we go down the river. And this headless statue is referred to as a headless hero the second time around, which is exactly what Ned is. And he became a statue, essentially. Not literally, but he has a statue of him made. And then the trees with roots bigger than their boat. We see that trees referenced in Bloodraven's cave, where the roots are bigger than a giant's leg. And in Winterfell, we see the Winterfell wewood compared to like being giant as well. I think all these symbols George is just putting there to sort of remind us that this is what we should be thinking about.
Then they all do mean something, though. Like the idea of the stairway that ends in nowhere. It's the same thing as walking into the sea and never being seen again. It's like going into the clouds. We see the fiery ladder. The mage in Karth ascends the ladder and then disappears. It's the same idea.
Yep.
So that's a pretty easy to interpret esoteric symbol. Mm-hmm. Let's see. The Eyrie. Okay. We mentioned Alyssa's tears. I guess let me just summarize my Signs and Portals podcast in 5 minutes. It is worth remarking on the statue that stands in the Erie's Godswood, a fine likeness of the weeping Alyssa Arryn. Legend holds that 6,000 years ago, Alyssa saw her husband, brothers, and sons all slain, and that she never shed a tear. I wonder if she was in on it. It's about the only way that would happen, by the way. Therefore, the gods punished her by not allowing her to rest until her tears fell upon the vale below. The great waterfall that tumbles from the giant's lance is known as Alyssa's tears, for the waters pour from such a height that they turn to mist long before they ever reach the ground. Now, let's just keep reading. It'll become obvious. Looming over them was the jagged peak called the Giant's Lance, a mountain that even mountains looked up to, its head lost in icy mist 3.5 miles above the valley floor. So the mountain's lost its head, and Gregor the mountain, who has a giant lance, which he plunges into Hugh of the Vale, and here the giant's lance is like poking up through the veil. Gregor loses his head too. And we just talked about how he's an honorary Stark because he's a strong and because he's got the Cerberus Hellhound symbolism, and he's turned into nobody and a giant statue, an ice warrior, etc. So here is the mountain version of that.
And Ned, our King of Winter, lost his head, and we also just saw the headless statue in the in Croyane as well. So we see this headless stone. Yeah,
maybe that even fits with the Death's Head moth idea. Because the Death's Head, it's a skull.
Yep,
that's what the moth looks like. So over its massive western shoulder flowed the ghost torrent of Alyssa's tears, like a cape or something. I don't know. Even from this distance, Catelyn could make out the shining silver thread bright against the dark stone. That is similar to the wall, which is like a silver bridge between a black abyss or something. I don't know. When her uncle saw that she had stopped, he moved his horse closer and pointed. It's there, beside Alyssa's tears. You can see from here. All you can see from here is a flash of white. We've seen that flash a lot of times. Every now and then, if you look hard and the sun hits the walls just right. 7 towers, Ned had told her, like white daggers thrust into the belly of the sky, so high you could stand on the parapets and look down on the clouds. That seems like an obvious Prometheus challenging heaven thing to me.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. Yep.
And the same thing with Alyssa. She's irreverent. She didn't cry. Like there's this, like it's not right. Alyssa, okay. This is just a summary of the same thing I just read. Catelyn wondered how large a waterfall her own tears would make when she died. And she turns into a stone statue woman with tears, the red and the white tears when she carves her face to make herself look like a weirwood. So again, weirwood and stone, same thing. There's the tears. Below, 2 guardsmen in sky blue cloaks led forth Tyrion Lannister. The Erie's plump septon escorted him to the statue in the center of the garden, a weeping woman carved in veined white marble, veined with blue, no doubt meant to be Alyssa. There's a couple snatches from the fight. A brief flurry of fighting ended as swiftly as it had begun when Bronn sidestepped and slid behind the statue of the weeping woman. So again, the weeping woman statue in the House of Black and White. This, another house of the gods. We're in the Godswood here. Sir Vardis lunged at where he had been, striking a spark off the pale marble of Alyssa's thigh. So there's your lightning spark. But Bronn jerked back. Jon Arryn's beautiful engraved silver sword glanced off the marble elbow of the weeping woman and snapped clean a third of the way up the blade. Broken sword time. Bronn put his shoulder into the statue's back. The weathered likeness of Alyssa Arryn tottered and fell with a great crash. Sounds like a moon crash. And Sir Vardis Egan went down beneath her. You want to pick up the next bit or give a comment first?
Probably off subject a little bit, but that trial by combat that we see in front of Alyssa's Arryn's crying statue has a lot of parallels with the Mountain and the Viper as well, both being fought for Tyrion. We see Cersei crying in the same way. One's very lightly armored, one's very heavily armored. It's just something I wanted to quickly point out. But apart from that, I think the main point is just seeing this crying woman. That we see that repeating motif in all these different locations, and it's meant to tell us about this Night's Queen figure. I think that we're looking at.
Yeah, and this is the Hellhounds fighting motif again, because they're fighting inside the Godswood, so that's inside the weirwood net.
Yep, that's a very good point. But yeah, and you said earlier that it compares very much that crying woman in the House of Black and White. Well, this next line and this next passage really hammers that home. So we find the snow drifted down. This is when Sansa's and she's become a lame stone. She's in the Eyrie. It says the snow drifted down and down, all in ghostly silence, and lay thick and unbroken on the ground. All colour had fled the world outside. It was a place of whites and blacks and greys, white towers and white snow and white statues, black shadows and black trees, the dark grey sky above. A pure world, Sansa thought. I do not belong here. Right, so there's that crying woman. We've got comparisons to it being a house of black and white. We've got this black and white references, colour fleeing the world, as we've seen in the Weirwood Cave when the torches light up and the colour fades, and leaving only black and white.
Arya at the Harrenhal Godswood, same thing.
Yep.
Jon at the Grove of Nine, same thing. It happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
They turn black. The blood of the weirwood turns black.
Turns black again. Yeah, right. And it goes through to say Sansa, who's a bit of a stand-in for this stone woman becoming a lame stone. She says, I do not belong here. So she's the stolen woman
Lyanna
archetype.
doesn't belong down here.
Yeah, same thing. She doesn't belong. She deserved to be up on a hill somewhere.
Hugely
down.
parallel. Anyway, obviously Sansa.
Yeah. Yet she stepped out all the same. Her boots tore ankle-deep holes into the smooth white surface of the snow, yet made no sound. That no sound thing's rather interesting. The others don't make sound when they walk through the snow. Sansa drifted past frosted shrubberies and thin dark trees.
Shrubbery. What is frosted? It looks nice. with an ice sword and star eyes and a path.
And a nice statue of a crying lady. And wondered if she was still
And a
dreaming.
black pond. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So she wondered if she was still dreaming. So we get this dreaming once again. Drifting snowflakes brushed her face as light as a lover's kiss and melted on her cheeks. At the center of the garden, beside the statue of the weeping woman that lay broken and half buried. Sorry.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
drifting snowflakes brushed her cheek as a light a lover's kisses. So this is just like Melisandre with the fire as a lover's kiss on her cheek. So this is good evidence that Night's Queen is a sorceress, making love to the magic like Melisandre, and even like this is Jack Frost kissing her on the cheek. It's a snowflake. That's the king of that's Jack Frost himself. So this is yeah. Go ahead.
1 second.
At the center of the garden.
At the center of the garden, beside the statue of the weeping woman that lay broken and half buried on the ground, she turned her face up to the sky and closed her eyes. She could feel the snow on her lashes, taste it on her lips. It was the taste of Winterfell, the taste of innocence, and the taste of dreams. So this is a stone. This is Elaine Stone laying down, facing up to the sky, so the snow could cover her. So she's sort of beneath the ground, and she tastes of Winterfell. She's not meant to be here. I think it's more of that weeping woman, that weeping stone woman, not meant to be down, trapped where she is. Something like that.
I think this is more evidence that the name Elaine is meant to be interpreted as a laying stone, like a stone that's been lain down, like a ley line stone.
That's good.
Because she's laying down here, literally.
Yep, a laid stone. Yep. Makes perfect sense. Yep.
Because that's what the Hinges of the World idea is, just George's version of ley lines, magical lines and coordinates around, where the magic is stronger and stuff. That's what the Hinges of the World are. So
definitely. Yep. So the next paragraph we have is interesting and sort of foreshadows more of that same idea. She would need to be brave down below, where the chance of being unmasked was so much greater. Peter's friends at court had sent him word that the Queen had men looking out for the imp and Sansa Stark. It will mean my head if I am found, she reminded herself as she descended a flight of stony steps. I must be Elaine all the time, inside and out. So she needs to be brave down below. She's descending a flight of icy steps, and she needs to become Elaine Stone inside and out. So it's almost as if
all the time, like all the time. Like,
all the time.
Yeah.
Eternally. Yeah. Yeah. What more do you say?
Oh my goodness, Crackclaw point. I didn't know you pulled these quotes. Hot damn, Eldric Stoneskin.
I read the chapter last night, man. We were talking about the start of chapters always really set the scene for what it's about. Straight away, the openings of the Crackclaw Point chapter. East of Maidenpool, the hills rose wild, and the pines closed in around them like a host of silent grey-green soldiers. So straight away, straight into it, George.
The pines and the sentinels and the soldier pines. Yeah, it's all doing the same thing. And it's the 79 sentinels are planted. That's the point. They're planted in the ice like trees, and they're given spears, which are like poles, and they've got horns like horned men. Well, war horns, but it makes them like horned men. So they're planted green men. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing here.
It's a really interesting chapter. There's a lot of talk in the chapter about magic swords and the heads telling her,
what do we want to read? Let's see here. It did sound like whispering. The heads are whispering, muttering to one another, telling her to use the sword. Where the keep had been was a pile of collapsed stones, overgrown with green and purple moss. The yard was all weeds and pine needles. Soldier pines were everywhere, drawn up in solemn ranks. In their midst was a pale stranger. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Pale child of Bacalon. The pale weirwood child, the stranger. Those weirwoods are space trees. Damn it, they are alien spores. They're mushrooms from outer space, man. This theory lives. George is constantly teasing it, at least.
Yeah.
Panspermia weirwood theory. I need to make a video. All right. A slender young weirwood with a trunk as white as a cloistered maid.
Yeah. So to me, that cloistered maid is almost that Nissa or Knight's Queen character, whoever it is,
The
trapped
shy
within
maid.
that weirwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that maid cloistered within it. That trapped.
Well, a cloister is a house of the gods. So forget about nuns for a second. It's the moon maid. It's
Oh
the
yeah.
maid in the tree. Nissa, yeah.
Yep.
That's where she is. That's Nissa. It's in the weirwood tree. That's awesome. That's a good one. Real good. Brienne saw a sapling sway. From the bushes slid a man so caked with dirt he looked as if he had sprouted from the earth. That's good mythology right there. That's actually Prometheus mythology. He gave fire to the clay men from the earth and created the humans that way. A broken sword was in his hand, but it was his face that gave her pause, the small eyes and wide, flat nostrils. So the last hero is like an earth man here or something?
Yeah, risen up out of the ground. He's sprouted from the earth, sprouted almost like a tree as well. We've got some very interesting language.
Let's go back to the Nightfort then. Let's see here. This has got parallels to everything, but also Crackclaw, where we just saw. It's got the same slender weirwood in the middle of the yard and a broken down castle. Let's see here. It was a long way down. The top of the well was bathed in moonlight, but it grew dimmer and smaller every time they went around. So I noticed the top of the well is like a moon door, and they're going down from that moon door, and it's repeated again. When Bran finally lifted his head around to look up the shaft, the top of the well was no bigger than a half moon. So the top of the well itself is the moon door that they've gone down, and then they go through the weirwood black gate, which glows like milk and moonlight. So it's another moon door, black and white. Then there's the water. The watery sounds were closed, but when Bran peered down, he saw only blackness. So there's the black abyss idea. A turn or two later, just white weirwood face, milk and moonlight. And the key thing is that it looks like the Grey King. Its mouth was closed, its cheeks were sunken, its brow withered, its chin sagging. If a man could live for 1,000 years and never die, but just grow older, his face might come to look like that. So it's the Grey King. What does the Grey King look like? A weirwood face. You know?
We even see that language around Hodor as well. I think Bran, I don't have the quote on me, but I think Bran even thinks or he wonders if Hodor lived to 1,000, whether he would shrivel up or not. I'd have to get that quote.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
That. Yeah.
Which is perfect. Which would make no sense until you're 3 hours deep into this live stream. And now it makes perfect sense.
That's it.
Are you having fun, by the way, man? Are you having fun here?
Absolutely.
Everything you hoped it would be.
This is love
Your
it.
debut on the David Lightbringer channel.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. This has been excellent, dude. I'm loving it.
Nice. Well, your haircut's looking good. I think everybody's appreciating what you're bringing here. So,
thanks, everyone.
Which is mostly your insight, but the haircut's a bonus. All right. So then the eyes are blind too. Who are you? The door asked, and the well whispered, Who are you? That's more. Shout out to Michael Talks About Stuff, who thinks the well is the inside of the weirwood trunk. Let's see. I am the sword of the darkness. So Sam recites the oaths and then goes through. And you pointed out that you have to recite like a phrase to get in the House of Black and White too.
Yeah. Yep. That pass. It's almost as if there's that password to enter. You got to almost as if you're joining.
All men must die is the password.
Yeah. 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 Yep. I just found that quote about Hodor, so I'll just quickly read it, man. Hodor happily agreed. He ducked to get his great shaggy head under the door. Hodor was nearly 7 feet tall. It was hard to believe that he was the same blood as Old Nan. Bran wondered if he would shrivel up as small as his great-grandmother when he was old. It did not seem likely, even if Hodor lived to be 1,000. So, more of that same stuff with Hodor again.
That's a good one. That's a real good one. We just linked the Grey King, Hodor, and the Black Gate, and we made it make sense. because they're all talking about
Who
the
would have
King of
thought?
Winter.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is good. This. I'm really glad we did all this work to organize. I feel like this has come out fairly coherently, considering how tangled this all is. You guys will have to tell me in the comments, but I just found this line. Hodor returned alone with both arms of dead wood and broken branches. In the same chapter, Bran thinks about himself as a broken boy, and Hodor carries Bran all the time. So Bran akin to dead wood, and dead weirwood turns to stone. Broken branches like a weirwood throne. So you become the weirwood throne. The boy and the throne, same thing.
Very good. Yep.
After the gods transform the cook into a monstrous white rat, afterward, this is the end of the rat cook story, who could only eat his own young. He roamed the Nightfort ever since, devouring his own children, but still his hunger was not sated. It was not for murder the gods cursed him, old Nan said, nor for serving the Andal king, his son, in a pie. Shout out Weirwood Paste. A man has a right to a vengeance, but he slew a guest beneath his roof, and that the gods cannot forgive. I'm not sure about the guest beneath his roof thing, but that's definitely something about the Nightfort Weirwood consuming the descendants of the original Stark who came there.
The Starks are very particular on guest right in general, and they sort of deny guest right with that sword across the lap too. So there's definitely something in that. And like you said, the rat cook itself being a monstrous white rat is definitely weirwood language, like feeding on children. It's
And then, I mentioned these already, so I'll just read it real quick. And the monstrous thing, like the weirwoods are always monstrous. That's, the Naga's ribs are too. Outside, the wind was sending armies of dead leaves marching across the courtyards, scratch faintly at the doors and windows. The sounds made him think of old Nan's stories. He could almost hear the ghostly sentinels calling to each other atop the wall and winding their ghostly war horns. Pale moonlight slanted down through the hole in the dome. There's that slant again, like the door of the crypts, painting the branches of the weirwood as they strained. It's a twisted weirwood too, so slanted, twisted. Maybe the message is altered. Painting the branches of the weirwood as they strained up toward the roof. It looked as if the tree were trying to catch the moon and drag it down into the well. So there's more of like you're down in the well looking up at the moon. And Bran is... And
even more of that Night's Queen. I'm not sure if Night's Queen is Nissa, but more of that Night's Queen being that moon-related person being dragged down into the well and being held. She's not meant to be down here. That's more of that same stuff as well.
Right, and Night King as Azor Ahai, the weirwood sorcerer, using the weirwood to reach up into the heavens and screw up the balance of the universe,
Yep.
Same thing as the abduction of this woman,
Yep.
And then we see Summer jump down from the dome. A shadow detached itself from the broken dome above and leapt down through the moonlight. That's the same shaft of moonlight that was connecting with the weirwood tree. Even with his injured leg, the wolf landed as light and quiet as a snowfall. So there's I think that's the same like snowy wolf warrior that we keep seeing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that being a shadow as well, detaching itself from the broken dome. Yeah, they're constantly referred to as shadows, the ability to separate the shadow. It's an interesting idea he's drawing on.
Right. A shadow detached itself from the broken dome. Yeah, it's definitely like a shadow coming to life from space. There are ghosts here, Bran said. Hodor had heard all the stories before, but Jojen might not have. Old ghosts from before the old king, even before Aegon the Dragon. 79 deserters who went south to be outlaws. One was Lord Wiswell's youngest son. Blah, 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 blah. The Lord Commander had holes hewn in the top of the wall, and he put the deserters in them and sealed them up alive in the ice. So that's reminded me of the language about sealing people up in the crypts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I noticed.
Absolutely.
They have spears and horns. They all face north. Sentinels like the sentinel trees.
It's also the fact that Lord Riswell goes and joins his son after when he passes, almost gives that familial connection as well, as if the
Oh, like the
family.
Starks taking in the
Yeah.
subsequent. Yeah. And
Mm,
Riswell's a
mm.
horse guy, too. So there's the
Yeah.
horse
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Very good point. Yeah.
You want to read some Unsullied quotes here?
Absolutely. If the Unsullied felt the heat, however, they gave no hint of it. They could be made of brick themselves, the way they stand there. 1,000 had been marched out of their barracks for her inspection, drawn up in 10 ranks of 100 before the fountain, before a pool of water, and its great bronze harpy. They stood stiffly at attention, their stony eyes fixed straight ahead. So we've got a lot of stone symbolism with the Unsullied. I went looking, so I've seen a lot of stone symbolism around Azor Ahai characters, and I went looking at Dany being a very clear Azor Ahai parallel character, and this come up, and I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. They parallel the Night's Watch, you know, they're as in the Night's Watch are symbolically castrated when they, have no wives, take no lands. The Unsullied are as well, and they, sort of nameless warriors. And it just seems to repeat. We have another line where against the pillars her Unsullied stood like statues in their spiked caps, their smooth faces expressionless. So we've got more statue warriors of Azor Ahai. Um, it keeps going. They sell eunuchs, not men. Eunuchs made of brick, like the rest of Astapor. Shall I buy 8,000 brick eunuchs with dead eyes that never move, who kill suckling babes for the sake of a spiked hat and strangle their own dogs? They don't even have names, so don't call them men, sir. So
Okay. Wow. There's actually a lot there that I'm noticing now. I stuck this in here earlier for the brick eunuchs with eyes that never move. But
mm,
they're brick just like the city of Astapor. The Starks stone, they're carved out of the same gray stone as the castle. Then it's like, oh, they kill suckling babes for the sake of a spiked hat. Well, this has something to do with sacrificing babies, probably, to the others, right? And then
yep,
we've got strangle their own dogs. Like, Ghost is probably going to die to resurrect John. The wolves are in stone as well. So,
yep.
I don't know about strangling their own dogs, but
Definitely a dog symbolic reference to dogs to put that in the back of the mind for sure. To think, we should be connecting this through to the Starks somehow.
the
They're
dogs
all
have to get grayscale too. They all get grayscale and go become statues. It's very solid.
yeah, yeah. And then they don't even have names, which they become no one. They become nameless, faceless.
That was the other thing. Yeah,
Once
this is
again,
again the
yeah,
bad hive mind. They lose their names, and then Dany gives them their names back, which is why I think she's going to help bring peace to all the whited souls. Give them eternal peace, and yeah,
yeah, for sure.
this is a great
This next
one.
one's
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
This is pretty. There's a little bit of complexity here to this, but it's a conversation between Danny and Krasnis, from memory. She says, uh, "No," he says, "Do you know how Unsullied are made and trained? Cruelly, I have no doubt. When a smith makes a sword, he thrusts the blade into fire, beats on it with a hammer, and then plunges it into ice water to temper the steel." So we're comparing these warriors to a weapon, like probably think like a Lightbringer in my eyes. That forging story. If you would savor the sweet taste of the fruit, you must water the tree. This tree has been watered with blood. Or how else to grow a soldier? So it's a bit of a complex conversation, but she's basically comparing the Unsullied to being the fruit of a tree that's watered with blood. And to be able to grow these stone soldiers or raise these stone soldiers, we need to water trees with blood. So that's very weirwood, very stone, Starks. You know, it's a very
Some
loaded
kind of weird with
conversation right there.
zombies that are being
Mm,
brought to life with blood magic. Yeah,
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 yeah.
that's it.
And probably the final one for the Unsullied, we have, I can't remember who's saying this, but we have a conversation where it's, a child departed Karth, as lost as she was lovely. I feared she was sailing to her doom, yet now I find her here enthroned, a mistress of an ancient city, surrounded by a mighty host that she raised up out of dreams. So we've, we've got these stone warriors that have been raised up out of dreams. So it's just more of this coming out of the weirwood, this army returning from
and
the weirwood.
even the word enthroned. The enthroned of Karth sit on wooden thrones, and they're dreaming of days gone by and talking about the deeds of their ancestors, and they're barely alive. That's a heavy parallel to the Green Seers and Bloodraven's cave. I almost put them on the list.
Absolutely, yeah.
The enthroned, yeah. You're supposed to weep for them, I think, or maybe that's the different group.
I need to reread that. Yeah, you could be right. That would be interesting if you do have to cry for them. We've seen that constantly. I
think that's it. We already did the Hodors.
Yeah.
And we read all these quotes. Damn, I didn't even think we'd do that. Shit.
So there you go.
There you go. 338. That's not bad. Honestly, I was afraid this was 4 hours. I thought this might be 4.
That was really good.
Oh, I'm so
really
hungry. I've got some. Where am I going? Not In-N-Out. What's the better burger place? I'm going to Five Guys. I'm going to Five Guys. I'm destroying.
We don't have any of that stuff.
Oh, you got good burger places, I'm sure.
We got Hungry Jack's. Which is your Burger King.
Don't talk to me of Hungry Jack's. Yeah, I know it's better. So the Australian Hungry Jack's is better. I did have it when I was there. But still, you can do better. Raise your standards. There must be something.
Yeah.
Adelaide is it's not just an intersection in the middle of the outback. It's an actual city, right?
We got good food. Good food and wine. Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole Monty Python skit about Australian table wines. That's right. It's a thing.
Yep.
Underrated, according to the Pythons. Once again for the killer stream. Thank you, and you're welcome. I am very pleased with how this went. This was great. A great introduction for you, Eldric, to all of my viewers and some of your ideas. And this is fun because I'd never really explored this territory before. I do have a couple of loose things I want to throw around here at the end, actually. Like moon meteors. You throw those around. With all of this about the idea of stone being able to preserve consciousness and be used for astral, like the idea of carving the faces and using them, that's astral projection. That's you're putting your consciousness in the stone and seeing out the eyes. So all of this magic, look at Mr. Moneybags over here, Five Guys. Yeah, they really have raised their prices, Greyways Tim. You're not lying. It's worth it, though. I'm sorry. It is. So good. Okay. I'm hungry. If consciousness can be stored in stone, and not just petrified weirwood, potentially, that really strengthens the idea that there might be Lovecraftian consciousness in the comet or the moons, or things like that, or the oily black stone. We haven't talked about the oily black stone, but it is hella haunted, hecka haunted, and hella haunted, and they've made idols out of it in a couple places. There's the sea stone chair is a kraken idol and a toad idol.
Yep.
And probably got some idols in Yin and Ahai, I would guess, made out of oily stone too. So yeah, I really do think Martin is implying that some sort of consciousness came to Planetos on that comet. And that may be something that is powering the others or lurking in the weirwood or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, and we see a lot of that. We see the Bloodstone Emperor. He's worshipping a black meteor that fell from the sky. And then we see the Lion of the Night in the House of Black and White. He's sat on an ebony chair, which could be like a sea stone chair, like a black stone chair. We see even the Sea Lords of Braavos. One of them's holding one of those stars up above his head, and a star would be obviously a meteor, like a fallen star that he's found and clutched and is raised above his head as his power. So yeah,
it's a mirror.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a mirror of the Titan holding the broken sword because the swords are made from meteors.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yep. You'll see a lot of this, and this is one thing we've discussed in the past, is maybe doing an Elden Ring stream. George's.
Oh no, we are Eldric. We're doing a hellified Elden Ring stream with you and Michael Talks, and we're probably going to do it soon, maybe even next month. So that's not a distant thing. That's we're going to do that soon thing.
Excellent. In there that we have a meteor that fell to the ground with a consciousness on it that then invaded a tree, and then there's a lot. It chose like a Green Sea parallel character to be its god on Earth, and that Green Sea parallel character has a shadow wolf that she uses to control. Yeah, it's George. It's really good, man. I can't wait for that. It's gonna...
That stream is gonna be, oh man, that's gonna be hard to.
I don't know how we're going to do that one, but
you're going to want to be there just for my reactions to all this stuff. I swear to God, I'm not going to be able to give you the fake Monty Python ones forever. I'm going to be literally losing my mind. I took a look. So Eldric Stoneskin contacted me a couple months ago and was like, hey, we talked about doing an Elden Ring. I put together a doc. Check it out. I was like, all right. I clicked on it. It's like 33 pages, it's just full.
That
I'm
was
just
trimmed.
And I'm just glancing through it, and everything that I stop to read is just like,
yeah.
So this is going to be interesting. We will have to consult. Same thing we did this time. Me and you and Michael will wrap beforehand and try to reduce my shock and awe so I can sort of understand what's going on and not be so bewildered. But I don't know. Maybe we should do the stream without that. Maybe you and him should plot, and it'll just be like blow David Lightbringer's mind into infinity. We'll get the live reaction.
While we're talking about stone people within trees, this character that is attached to a tree within Elden Ring, she becomes a statue eventually in time. So just more of the same thoughts and ideas. But yeah, can't wait for that, mate. It's going to be amazing.
I wanna do. I'm not gonna suppose that Maynard Plum is still sitting at the computer 3.5 later. So I'm gonna do this poll real quick. Should I get prepped before the Elden Ring stream? And to be clear, the choice is I go in fresh and just like have them rock my gourd with this stuff. Or if I prep, it'll be slightly more organized because I'll be coming in with some idea of what's happening. I think I know how this is going to go. That's about what I thought, yeah. Cool, saves me time. Oh boy, yeah, that's what I thought. Northern Tommy loves me. He's my mod. He cares about the channel. He's like, oh, you should get prepped. Like, that's the reasonable opinion. But no,
to be honest,
at least 60% are like, we want blood,
Well, the way you structured this is incredible because there's so many different ideas that I tried to lay it out and I couldn't do it as well as you've had so much experience doing these streams and laying it out how it needs to be. I think to deliver it well, it'd be nice to blow your mind, but I think to deliver it well, you'd want to sort of lay it out in a fashion, like just the way you did this was incredible, is my point.
Minty says no prep, so I want chaos. Mickey says no prep also. Let the boys cook first. That's what I think you and Michael should talks and
cool.
confab a little bit. And I bet you can figure out like what order to go in. It can be a little chaotic. It's just going to be a whole lot of correlations, and yeah, it'll be fun to talk about. Yeah.
So basically, George wrote the world building before it, and then Miyazaki, the video game designer, built the world from what George wrote. So the prehistory, a bit like sort of Robert's Rebellion stuff, would be George, and then the current events would be written by him. So we'd only go through the backstory, the lore that he's written, and you'll see the very clear parallels. As you've already seen, you can just scroll through that. I sort of designed it in a timeline of events.
Okay.
But yeah, happy to do either, man. Whatever you'd like.
I think, I think that, no, I haven't played it at all. Not a bit. I keep hearing about it. Obviously, people tell me. I've gotten little slips of what's going on. And I feel like I have a loose idea because so much of it sounds like the deep world building that we feel like we've uncovered through symbolism. So
absolutely,
yeah. Anyways,
and
look out for that. It'll be coming.
It'd be great to have Grey Waste Tim there as well in the chat because this was George's chance to just go full Lovecraft The outer gods actually exist. There's proof of outer gods in this game. This is George just going full myth.
We haven't done a 4-person stream in a long time here because they are a little much. It's a lot.
Chaotic.
Like I feel like 3 pushes it. The 3 in the chat, because the chat's like a 4th person. But if we want to go full chaos, maybe have Tim on there. His gourd can get rocked too, because a lot of it is very Lovecraftian. Huh? Okay. Yeah.
Very Lovecraft. It's a lot of. There's been videos about Elden Ring is basically just cosmic horror, it's set in fantasy, which it absolutely is. It's incredible.
Well, it'll be 4 white guys on a stream, and I do apologize. You're Australian, that's diversity. But it'll be worth it. I think that'll be good. And also, I would like to promo Mickey, our mod, is actually going to be appearing soon on the channel as a guest, and we're going to talk about a character that we talked about today, Sansa Stark. So I think we were talking about doing that next week, Mickey, but let me double check with her and my schedule and make sure that's happening. I'm moving right now too, so I might need to talk with my manager and figure out which stream to do when. But it'll either be next week or very soon that me and Mickey will do a character analysis stream for Sansa. This is so I promised a Sansa and Littlefinger stream for like 2 years. Then I did a Littlefinger stream about a year ago, and we haven't done the Sansa. She says she's good whenever. Okay, cool. Very well. Well, I'll just talk to Maynard James Plum, and figure out what's the best day. But yeah, this will be the other stream that was promised. Thank you, Minty. Yes, the new place is nice. And we will do the full Sansa character analysis. We'll get into some of the... I keep talking about Thiazi and the Norse myth of Idun and the apples. I caught some more stuff. She was standing on the balcony looking at a falcon, wishing she had wings. And that's part of the whole thing. Like, Idun is rescued by being turned into a nut, and somebody else turns into a falcon and carries her. She's got the chestnut hair and wants to have wings, because George is going to invert the myth, and instead of her being rescued, she's going to kind of do it herself. So she gets the wings. It's a really cool thing. So I'll prepare that in a coherent fashion. And
cool.
Oh, I saw that message, Grey Waste Tim. I saw it before you retracted. It's okay. I don't know why you deleted that, but anyway, so subscribe to Eldric, subscribe to Michael Talks About Stuff, and if you missed the Lore Summit #1 with Michael Talks about the Weirwood system, that is waiting there for you just a couple of weeks back in the live stream tab. If you are a patron or a Discord member, I will look for the new... okay, what am I saying? Click the join button to join the YouTube Squisher membership. You get perks in the chat. You get your messages highlighted. It's $5 a month. You get 1 free super chat message. And then you get an invite to the Discord, which I will post every week, or I do post every week, under the membership tab. And then if you join Patreon, it's supposed to give you an auto invite. Doesn't always happen. So I'm going to start posting a link there. And I'm also, like I said, starting to post extra philosophical musings and various other forms of content on Patreon. So check that out if you've thought about joining, or if you're on there. It's more a message to people that subscribe to Patreon and don't check it because I don't post stuff there very much. Start checking it. So there you go. That's it. Thank you, Eldric. You've been a great guest. I did finish your video last night. Enjoyed it very much. Your most recent one. So what was that one called?
The many-faced old gods. Just comparing the many-faced god to the old gods, and the skin flaying magic. I won't start, but yeah, it was. Thanks for watching it, man, and thanks for having me on the channel, dude. I had a great time. It was awesome.
Yeah, this was good times, man. This was just what we want to be doing here. So, you've seen my Bolton Secret video, right?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And I agree with that wearing of the skins to steal the Stark's power, 100%. We see that in the skin trade as well, like one of George's other stories. And those two characters are very much Bolton.
It was somebody
parallels.
in the comments that told me about skin trade, and then I looked into it and was like, oh, yeah, it's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and the two people that do that, there's an elderly man and his very deranged son. So it's very Roose Bolton, Ramsay Bolton. Yeah, I won't go into it, but yeah, that's actually quite a good read if anyone's interested. But yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, so the Bolton Secret is in the produced videos side, and it's pretty recent. You can find that one. It's called The Bolton Secret. And then, yeah, just go over to Eldric's channel. Check out his most recent ones, or any of his videos, really. Now that if you've been through the stream, you'll have a good idea of, like, what he's talking about and how to, you'll get right into his videos, so. And then, like I said, guys, when you see White Walker Iceberg pop up in your feed tomorrow morning, please do give it a click, even if you don't have time to watch a whole thing. Even more than leaving a comment, clicking on it in the first hour turns out to be one of the hugest things that YouTube decides whether or not it's a good video to show people or not. If my people click on it more, it's like, this is hot shit. I'm going to push it out to everybody. So really do appreciate that. And then if you don't have time to watch it all Monday morning, fine, but let it play while you're getting ready for work, and finish it later or something. So appreciate y'all. Been a great stream. Thank you, Eldric, and I will see you tomorrow with a new video, and next week potentially with Mickey to talk about Sansa.
Thanks, mate. Bye all.
Peace.